Okay. Calling to order the Parowan City Council meeting for January 26, 2023, 6 p.m., and we're grateful for all of you that are here tonight. Appreciate you. It says it's on. It must not be turned up, but it is on. Hello. I can there's a green light. Oh my goodness. Technology issues. So we have kind of a long agenda, and I've promised to kind of clip along tonight, so bear with us as we work through all of these really important items. We are going to start with an opening prayer from Commissioner Wood, and she is going to lead us with the pledge following the prayer.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for all the many blessings that we've received. We thank Thee for this beautiful place that we live. And we appreciate all that Thou hast given us. Please bless those tonight that make decisions, that they may make them with knowing the right things to do. Thank Thee for all the many blessings again, and thank Thee for our military, first responders, and we ask that we will always remember those that have gone before us. And this I say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Oh, just started working. She's fine. She's fine.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Marilyn.
Commissioner.
All right. Do we have any conflicts with or personal interest in any agenda items by the city council members?
No, Mayor.
No, Mayor.
No. No. Yes, Mayor, I may have one.
Okay.
Item number 18, I need to declare a conflict of interest, and but I'll still participate in the discussion, and if there is a vote, even though it's on the work meeting, I'll participate.
Okay. Noted. Thank you. I wanted to try something to see how it goes tonight, but on coming up, looking at our agenda, on approving our agenda, I thought it might be kind of just for all of us to kind of looking ahead. As council with item number 21, it always seems like we kind of have a pause on that. Will we be leaving closed session on the agenda, or will that be not included in tonight's agenda? Will we have a closed session?
I'm not aware of one myself. I don't know about the council.
So if we won't, we could strike that item, and then it's not that kind of cliffhanger out there. How does that sound? Okay, do we need to vote on that? Or is it just part of approving the meeting's agenda?
It'll be just part of approving it. We'll just state that we're...
amendment.
Okay. And the only other change I have is on the recycling item, Laura McCord. She is not a resident, so... Oh, she is a resident. Oh, so cool. All right. All right. We don't have to change that one then. Okay, so that's with that one change, do I have the council's approval on tonight's agenda?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda with the removal of number 21.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Moving into public comment time. This time has been set apart for you. Those of you who have shown up for public comment, you can express your ideas and concerns on non-agenda items, and your comments are limited to 2 minutes per person.
Good evening, Susan Seppi, Parowan resident. I would like to express my gratitude to those who were responsible for the constructing of the Winter Wonderland exhibit in town this Christmas. And I'm sorry I haven't been here since the display was up, so I just wanted to make sure that I expressed my gratitude because it was really very, very nice. I haven't been to the display in a couple of years, and this year's exhibit was beautiful. There was a lot of thought and work that went into that exhibit, and I think those that are instrumental in that process should be commended. Thank you to all of you. Regarding the new police chief in Parowan, I'd like to express my gratitude to him and the department under his leadership. I've lived in Parowan since 2005, and I have never witnessed the police presence as I see today. Rarely would a patrol car come through our area, and their visibility in town was non-existent. I now witness at least one patrol car, sometimes more, coming through our subdivision. I would like to commend Chief Adams on his great leadership. The city made the right decision in his hiring. Regarding the city pool, this has been a very contentious discussion within the community. However, I believe that no further town meetings or public discussions need to be had. I believe the consensus of the community know that we need a city pool, but a city pool we can afford. I know that you are awaiting the results of a feasibility study. However, it is now almost February. There will be no city pool again this summer. This will be 3 years our community has been without. For 3 years, I have heard the council and the pool committee talk about getting funding, and yet, crickets. We all know the reality. In this economy, no matter what the feasibility study determines, Parowan cannot afford the monthly upkeep of a massive indoor pool. I believe the public has indicated that in numerous meetings conducted regarding this matter. And lastly, on January 19th, I sent an email to the council, mayor, and city manager regarding the Bryan Head Resort expansion. Only 3 members of the council, Ms. Downey, Mr. Shurtleff, and Mr. Gale, had the courtesy to address my concerns. I can't tell you how disappointed I am that the majority of you did not feel that you had an obligation to acknowledge my concerns, let alone address them. Yesterday, I had a conversation with Matt Rhodes of UDOT regarding my traffic concerns. He was immensely helpful and forthcoming with information. He answered every question and assured me that UDOT is also concerned with the expansion. He indicated that a traffic study is currently being conducted at Ridgeview Drive in Bryan Head, and for now, traffic through Parowan and up the mountain has not reached the capacity of 20,000 vehicles per day. However, he understands that in the future that may possibly change. He also told me that semi-annually, spring and fall, UDOT meters the traffic on state routes. However, he understands that the only route to Bryan Head in the winter months is through Parowan. Therefore, he would like to meter the traffic during the winter months to get more accurate data. As for the other concerns I addressed in my email, the infrastructure of sewer and water, that will have to be addressed by this body. How can we mandate that new homeowners and businesses bring water shares with them and yet share our water with Bryan Head and not mandate those same requirements? The sewer system in Parowan is also utilized by Bryan Head. There is no way that our current sewer treatment plant can sustain the expansion of Bryan Head and Parowan. Who are we serving first? When speaking with Mr. Rhodes, we both agreed that this is a 30-year project. However, he told me that in Cedar City, They have areas with a road expansion projection of a 30-year tract, which has been reduced to 15 years because of the exponential growth seen in Iron County. These are serious concerns that the residents of Parowan need answers. I hope the city is actively involved in discussions with Bryan Head Town. I also expect that as this project evolves, the city will keep the residents of Parowan apprised as how this will impact our community, and it will in numerous ways. You have an obligation to your constituents to ensure that our property and lives will not be impacted or disrupted by another town's growth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Okay. We can now move into the consent portion of our meeting. These are items that usually require no further discussion and are routine in nature. All items on the consent agenda are usually adopted by a single motion.
Point of inquiry, Mayor. Are we just approving the minutes for December 8th? What about the 12th, or what was the last council?
We don't have those yet, so.
The 12th.
Just the 8th.
Okay. I have I guess, I don't know, a comment on the minutes. Dan Jessen, in his report, he talked about a ad hoc committee meeting which was held, and says it included public safety. That was Chief Addison Adams was present, and the mayor and himself, and I was present also at that meeting.
Was that the one that you and Chief Adams and I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't remember Councilman Burton there, so I'm trying to sort those out. The one we had we had kind of an emergency.
I'm not sure which meeting you're referring to,
It's about
Councilman.
the, ordinance violation, that meeting you had with Judy and...
Is that, well, this was...
That was a different one.
This is different. This is at the Meeks Pond.
It wasn't about Meeks Pond.
Yeah, I remember the one that we had.
Because we had a PIO meeting with just Chief Adams and the city manager and I, but I'm trying to
Right.
think of
This
the one
is a
you're talking
different
about.
one. This
Okay.
Oh, it just says Dan Jessen reported that a group of concerned citizens requested a meeting, so they held an ad hoc committee meeting,
Yeah.
which included public safety, Justin Daly from Parks, Mayor and himself, and Councilman Burton.
Okay.
That's true. I just wasn't sure. We have a lot of meetings.
I know.
The only thing I saw was on the last page, 11 of 11. It says, this is a fund recreational amenity, and it was supposed to be fun. And I just don't want that to be confused with like it took funding, because it has the word fund. So, it's a little tiny typo, but that's the only correction that I saw. So with those changes, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the December 8th meeting?
I'll move to approve the city council minutes from December 8th with the changes as noted.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries, thank you. So the other items in the consent meeting, we need to make a motion to approve those as well, since we kind of dialed in on the minutes, I think.
I'll make a motion to approve items 7 and 8 of the consent meeting.
I have one question, where it says reissuing payment, that was for the water. I mean, it's incidental, but I'm just wondering what reissuing a payment? It's to Southern Utah University, it's for water.
Yeah,
testing. Lab.
Maybe the check got lost in the mail? Is that what it was? And so you were just reissuing a payment? So, check got lost in the mail, they just canceled it, probably reissued it.
Okay, so I think we had a motion, but I don't know if I heard a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Moving now into the action meeting, we have action item number 9, the water amendment ordinance.
Did you approve the financial statement for December?
Items
Yes,
7
we
and
did
8
it
we
to 7
did.
and 8 together.
Okay,
7 and 8.
thank you.
Or the motion was made for 7 and 8. Item number 9, water amendment ordinance 2023-01-01. So
Councilman Burton, were you going to talk about your concern on this, and
Yeah.
possible modification of this?
Okay, there was one concern. I visited with the water rights office in Cedar. And we discussed where it says that the city may also accept irrigation and surface water rights as it determines appropriate in exchange for culinary water rights. And there's quite a discussion over that. The process of doing that is very difficult, and it has to meet quite a criteria. So their suggestion was that we address the underground water rights issue, being that's what we are dealing with the underground water study or the management plan. And it's underground water that we are really dealing with, and there is a difference between the value of underground water and surface water and the conversion of that, and even to get a basis where you're getting a proper exchange, it's very difficult, but it isn't just done automatically. It's a very extensive process. And so, in looking at that, I think we ought to remove the acceptance of irrigation and surface water rights and just leave this dealing with the underground water rights, because that's what we are dealing with at this time. And it allows for the different conversions, like this refers to the state, what would you define that as, Dan? It's not this is just the state's, ratios, what is it, 0.4?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that what the state? Yeah.
That's their old recommendations, which they're getting away from, but those stay in there. But I'm not sure what you're getting at about that.
Well, that's what they, you have to convert and to determine the amount of underground water right this time. Without that, what is it, EU?
ERC.
ERC,
Which,
okay.
Which, when we go to that model, we're gonna have to take a hard look at it, have quite a discussion, come up with the formulas, take it through water board and all that. And we're not ready to do that. Not only that, we're not required yet as of October, and 3,300 population will have to. So in the meantime, I think we're good to just implement it.
But this, you're dealing with, just underground water, and if you try, the surface water maybe should be something, we have a secondary water system, and, we need to keep them separate, the secondary and the underground, and the underground needs to be kept separate from the culinary in definition. And so, I would just suggest that we remove that did we determine that we can do that?
So, and I was hoping to ask Justin, since it's been to a public hearing, now this doesn't, I don't think if we alter one sentence, that doesn't change really the impact. I don't think that would prevent us from adopting it, even amending it and adopting it with some slightly different language. Just to be clear, it says Parowan City may also accept irrigation and surface water, and in the past, I think the city did do that. In the recent past, the answer has been a hard no when somebody asks if we'd take surface water rights or shares in a canal or something like that. We just said, nope, it's gotta be underground water, and it's gotta be viable, it's gotta be proved up on, it's gotta be transferred into our wells, and that's what the city's policy has been. But the fact that it still leaves it out there as a possibility, people ask about it. So one of the things that we could do, if you wanna look and see the sentence, it's on page 2 at the very top. This is what it says: Parowan City may also accept irrigation and surface water rights as it determines appropriate in exchange for culinary water rights. And to Dave's point, to Councilman Burton's point, culinary is a vague term, because what we're really talking about is underground water. And so, we could either strike that sentence completely. I would suggest that we modify the sentence, because it actually provides some clarity. If we modified it that said Parowan City will not accept irrigation and surface water rights, cross out as it deems appropriate. So, will not accept irrigation and surface water rights in exchange for underground water rights. Because then it makes it very clear that what we're talking about is underground water rights, and we're not gonna take, irrigation and surface water rights. Now, if we do that, it would prevent us, for our own code, from, let's say somebody comes to us and says, I got a spring that's producing X amount of water, would the city be interested in that? We would just say a hard no. Right now, we could consider it, and we've just administratively been saying no. So that's kind of what we're talking about. That's not kind of, that is what we're talking about.
But when you consider it, you're also putting it into the discretion of the state water rights.
Yeah.
And they have quite a process.
Oh yeah, it's quite a process. It'd be very difficult, not to mention major haircut that you take, and it's a lot of administrative work, both on the developer and on the city to even consider something like that.
But the difference in the value of underground versus surface is there's a significant difference.
Hey, Justin.
Yes, you can.
Good timing. We wanna remove a sentence or alter it a little bit. You heard that. Okay, cool.
Well, actually, Judy told me. She was just texting me, you better get here.
She gave you a heads up.
Good job, Judy.
Good job.
You've had your hearing, you've presented the ordinance, you can change your ordinance.
Okay. Is it, at what point do we need to have another public hearing? If we've modified it significantly, and it's like, the public says, oh, wait, we didn't have a chance to comment on that.
If it were, a real significant change, then I would encourage you to do it. There's no law that says you do or you don't have to, but if it was sufficiently to where you're saying, okay, it was black and now we're white, then you really should do that. But the opportunity to be heard, the public has an anticipation that when they come, things might change because public input. In fact, you would hope that if the public's correct and we're wrong on something, that you would change it and do it right. So there's no anticipation that you wouldn't change what you're doing with public input. Otherwise, we might as well not have a public hearing.
Sure.
Oh, ow.
But, yeah, after speaking to the Division of Water Rights, I agree with Dan. I think that modification would take care of that. And I think that would make it so that there wouldn't be an issue in the future, we would hope.
It would match what we've been administratively doing, and one other thing that it does, we don't use the word underground hardly anywhere. We really just refer to culinary water, and we refer to the date of that water.
Right.
And so by modifying it, by leaving it in, it clearly delineates what type of water we're gonna say we want or we will accept.
Right. And they were very, they can't tell us what to do, but they were very suggestive that we're dealing with the underground water management plan and that we specify underground water.
And I do get this question a lot. I mean, I was just asked this question yesterday. If we would accept shares. Shares are different than rights. Shares are shares in a company, in a canal company, you know. And I said, nope, we don't. And they said, well, your code says that you can. And I'm saying, well, it says that we can accept irrigation or surface water rights, but I'm telling you that the city has decided not to do that, and it does say in there as it deems appropriate is the current language. So anyways, I think we've beat that horse.
So do we need to kind of restate what that change would be so that when the motion is made, it's clear?
Well, whatever everybody thinks, my thought that you just take out may also, replace it with will not. You cross out as it determines appropriate. You exchange the word underground for culinary, and it accomplishes all that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so with those adjustments, is there a motion that someone would like to put on the table?
I'll make a motion to approve, the Water Amendment Ordinance 2023-01-01 with the modification as presented.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, and we will have to do a roll call vote since it's an ordinance change.
David Burton, aye.
Rochelle Topham, aye.
Sharon Downey, aye.
Matt Gale, aye. Jim Shirtliff, aye.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. Okay, now moving to action, meeting item number 10, RV Park Extended Stay Ordinance 2023-01-2.
I do have a comment on that, Mayor. And I talked about this in general last meeting, when we had the public hearing. We had a little bit of a moment of panic. Was that yesterday, Sharon? Was that earlier today? Yesterday, about, where it talks about the time restraint, which is one of the things that this does is alter that. It alters it from restricting use to 14 days to a phrase of a transient nature. And we talked about that, we talked about it in Planning Commission, we talked about it in public hearing, and we thought that somehow it wasn't in the final version, and it is. It's just moved down to number B under application 155630. It does seem a little vague. And that, I mean, the fact that I think I read through it 3 times looking for it. Sharon told me she read through many times.
Yeah.
I heard from others as well that, where is it?
Find it.
It is there, it's just vague until you have it pointed out. One thing that, I mean, there again, I know that this is really, I think, the sticking point in this potential modification. And in talking with, I know there's been, the Planning Commission wasn't united. I think it was a 4-to-1 vote. There was some comments in the public hearing about this. I think this is the big concern is, do we limit this or not? Essentially, the ordinance takes, it takes away that and it replaces it with the word transient. By the way, the definition of the word transient is passing especially quickly into and out of existence. This is from Merriam Dictionary. And passing through or by a place with only a brief stay or sojourn. So that's the definition of that, but it does give the city some flexibility to do, and then it requires a conditional use permit. So the Planning Commission and then ultimately the City Council, in the cases of RV parks, a conditional use permit goes to the City Council, can place limitations on any future RV, or if a existing RV wanted to come back and ask for a conditional use permit. But it doesn't really provide any guidance other than the word transient. So, we could leave it as it is. Well, first of all, we could not adopt it, that's an option. The second option is we could get rid of the word transient and put a date in there, days. We could put it, well, we put it at 14, and then it doesn't really hardly change the ordinance except for the other things. We could put it at 30 days, we could put it at 60, 180, whatever you wanted to do. The idea that was the concept that was talked about in Planning Commission was that, we would potentially allow an RV park to have a section of their RV park that had longer stay, not to exceed a certain amount, and then the other section would have really short-term stay. But that would all be just whatever would be decided in a conditional use permit. So those are some options. The word transient is in there, and a conditional use permit is required the way it's written. But what I was gonna say is, if we leave the word transient in there, I think it'd be really helpful to actually add transient into the definitions that says transient means a person or persons passing through or by a place with only a brief stay or sojourn. For this chapter, this is interpreted as blank days or less.
That's what I was gonna ask. Now, clarification on transient. According to our transient tax, is 29 days or less.
Yeah, for
Right.
purposes of the transient tax, that's right. So the question is does that then
But, yeah, the
define...
clarification, yeah.
And if we want that as the definition, then I'd say we actually just say that. You know what I mean? 29 days or less, if that's what we're trying to do. I don't know if transient room tax and us saying transient means that we need to interpret it as 29 days. I hate the vagueness if that's what our intention is. I'd rather just come out and say it.
That's what I would rather, do.
Right.
Something that's come out and say it, but not,
So that's why I say, if we added that definition, we could put our own definition of what transient is.
yeah,
It's
'cause
kind of
my definition and your definition may be totally,
well, how big is big, how small, how short is transient?
Yep.
So just let me add on this. The deferral is always to the citizen of your property. So if your ordinance is vague and it's not specific enough, then the court will rule in favor of the landowner, because the courts always defer to the free alienation of property. So if you want a specific time, you need to put it in there. I would not use transient as a definition. If you
So-
want 29 days, put in 29 days.
What's your opinion of using the conditional use permit as the tool to define each RV's?
Conditional use permits have their place.
Right.
Most communities don't really understand them. Conditional use permit is basically, it is considered to be a permitted use, but it gives the city opportunities to mitigate damages, provided that you have the information of what you're looking to mitigate. In other words, if you're gonna mitigate stuff and your concerns are A, B, C, D, and E, then those are the things you can look at to mitigate. You can't just, most cities think you can just put it in a conditional use permit and then you can just make up whatever you want.
Right.
You have to make the facts that you are trying to mitigate match what you say in your ordinance that is being mitigated.
So I think
Like,
the
we don't wanna
concept-
impact the values of neighboring property, so then you can evaluate and do these things to make sure that neighboring properties are not impacted. But you've gotta have your reasons, and then you follow those reasons, so.
So I think the idea, and if this is a bad idea, let's just squash it. But this was the idea that if you have an RV park that is full of long-term residents, it is basically a mobile home park, which is problematic for different reasons. But the whole reason why we limit the number of the stay is because it is an RV park, that people are coming and going, rather than, people in trailers living very close proximity where we have to deal with the negative impact of that. So we would say that is the identified problem, and to mitigate that with conditions, we would allow only a percentage of the park to have a stay of such and such, and the rest of the park would have a shorter term stay. But if that's not a good tool to address that, then...
I don't know if the conditional use permit's a good tool. The real problem you have there is, there's no way to regulate that. You're not gonna sit there and mark with a piece of chalk everybody that comes in, so you know those people have come long-term or short-term. Now, maybe if the park says, we will designate this area for long-term, this area is for short-term, But you know what'll happen is if long-term fills up, it'll bleed over into the short-term. That's just the nature of business.
Yeah.
So if you're transient RV park, then you need to be an RV park. If you're a long-term park, then you're a long-term park. I'm just saying, you can do it that way, but you will never be able to police it, 'cause it'll never work out. You might for a year.
Well, yeah.
Eventually, you won't police it.
And I guess the advantage of a conditional use permit is if it's not working, or they're not compliant, you can always pull it.
That's the conditional use permit advantage. If you do that, you can jerk the permit.
You know, ever since this came to planning and zoning, which has been a month ago, or a little bit over, I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been talking to friends and residents about it. And in my opinion, this is how I feel, and how a lot of them felt, that the RV park's been open for about a month, month and a half. We have not even seen the effect that it's going to have on the town. My feeling is that we wait 6 months to a year to readdress this, so we can find out what kind of impact this is going to have on the community before we do the extended stays. That's just how I feel.
But you've gotta have a minimum now,
14 days you have.
We do already.
so you just leave it at 14
For
days.
14 days, for even 6 months to address it. That's gonna get us through the spring and into the summer, to see how this affects the community. I'm not saying not to do it, I'm just saying let's wait.
Well, I think we kinda discussed and thought we ought to at least go to the transient, time frame of 29 days or whatever it is.
I'm just giving you my opinion, that's all.
I mean, as far as the date time, we discussed it, but we didn't say this is the way I would like to go.
So what did you say?
We discussed it just like we're doing now. That's all we did.
We never made
No, we never did any
anything
decision.
up.
Well, so what's your opinion then?
I'm still up in the air on it.
Can I ask you a question, just offside, sorry. I'll just say this and I'll shut up, 'cause this is legislative, not a legal decision. What are you trying to achieve? If 29 days achieves what 14 days achieves, then no big deal. What are you trying to achieve? Obviously, we defer to help businesses in this community to go. So what are we trying to achieve with that? Are we trying to achieve, does 29 days stop what you're trying to achieve to 14 days? Or does 14 days stop what you don't want to happen if you go to 29 days? And if you know that, then you'll, maybe you can make your decision that way. It's just, I think you gotta figure out what you're trying to achieve, and then you know where you're going, whichever way you decide to go.
Well, I mean, just a little research I did, I looked around and called around, and I didn't find another park that had that limited of a stay rule. So I was just trying to see what the business model was for an RV park.
Well, and I hate to rehear it, 'cause we did the public hearing, but knowing that there were concerns and maybe a way that we could modify it, that's why I kind of brought it up, but, you know, and we don't write code for one person's request, right? But if it's something that's identified, but to be clear, we're not talking about one RV park, we're talking about all RV parks within the city. Right now, there's technically 2. This would apply to any current parks and future parks, but there was a lot of discussion from the new RV park that this would help them with their business. So the reason I say this is not to make an argument, but to answer Justin's question. What were we trying to achieve with this was making it a little less restrictive. And of course, the feedback was that was the law, that was the way it was when the application for building was done and all of that. But that was where this came from, was trying to be a little bit more business friendly and not as restrictive. I believe, to answer the mayor's question, Larry looked into it and found some cities that had 0 restrictions, other cities that had that had right in their code that a certain percentage of the park could be a longer stay and a certain percentage was shorter. And some of them just had a hard 30 days and a hard 180 days. I think he found about 4 different versions of that, but hopefully that answers your question, Mayor.
But also, you don't, my thinking is also, you don't want a trailer court to turn into a long-term, and it may have already happened with one, but, you know, the long-term intent, but you're also, maybe, I'm hoping that if you do a little longer, are you gonna get rid of some of the people that are staying on their lots? I've addressed that before, you know, I don't know, that's where I'm, you know, 'cause there are people that are staying on their lots right now with it, or neighbors' lots and stuff like that, long-term.
There's provisions in here for people that are building homes.
Correct, and I can see that.
Right,
Which, by the way, we don't have that now,
right.
and it would be nice to add that flexibility, even if the council decided to not change the 14 days. I think that would be helpful. We do have people that are doing an owner-builder, and they'll stay in an RV on their lot while they do it. Other than that, and I don't know if people realize this, you can't just live in your RV in Parowan unless it's in an RV park.
It's hard to police, and it's happening.
It is.
I know several places.
Yep.
To backtrack what I said for the 14 days, that's only 2 weeks difference. And that'll still give enough time for the 29 days for it to see what the effect has on the community with the 29 days.
So you're,
Well, wait a minute, how would, you're saying 14 days or 29 days?
29 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
oh, okay, that's what I wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
that you would,
I said going from 14 to 29 is roughly 2
2
weeks
weeks.
more.
Yeah,
It's not that much more to give the time, but I want to see what this park will do to the effect of the community during the high seasons. That's my feeling.
well, I think we ought to make some concession, and I don't think that's unreasonable, going from 14 to 29. I think that's, you're not gonna have that great of a difference in impact. It might give somebody an opportunity to get more, I don't know, oriented in whatever they're trying to do, I don't know.
Well, and it seems like there are people in the audience that want to make a comment, but I'm not really sure on the protocol since we already had the public hearing. I think the thing that was compelling to me is it gives us a tool. The conditional use gives us a tool that we don't currently have.
Correct.
and if they apply for a conditional use permit, doesn't mean that we have to accept it, or we do have to accept it?
Oh, no, you have to accept it unless you cannot mitigate the changes. So it's basically a permitted use with conditions. So you don't put things in there that you just say, this will be in this single-family residence. We're gonna allow single-family residence in our single-family residence zone. That's a permitted use. We don't do conditional use permits. You do conditional use permits because you think that may have an adverse effect on your community sufficient that you need to be able to provide additional guidance. But a conditional use permit is deemed to be permitted. You are required to permit it with mitigation, and you have an obligation to attempt to mitigate any adverse impacts it may have on the community. So it's deemed basically permitted, but with conditions. The only way you cannot agree to a conditional use permit if the harm that's going to occur to the community cannot be mitigated. There is only 2 cases in the state of Utah where a conditional use permit was denied and upheld by the court. One of them was down in Springdale, and they wanted to do a commercial parking lot right next to a bunch of residences. And they said, well, we'll put up trees. And the city determined that there was nothing they could do to stop the noise, the lights, and the impact upon the neighboring properties where this parking lot would be. And they held it up, said these cannot be mitigated sufficiently, and the Court of Appeals upheld it and said, we'll defer to the city. They cannot, they could not do that. So that's...
Who issues those permits? This body or planning and zoning?
No, planning and zoning issues them because it's, your ordinance can say whichever, but it is an administrative procedure. So once you permit a conditional use permit, it becomes an administrative matter, not a legislative matter anymore,
Regardless of which body hears it.
regardless of which body.
And in our code, planning and zoning does approve the conditional use permits, but but RVs specifically says the city will decide. But that is still an administrative decision by the city, not a legislative decision. So you have to act as an administrative body, like Justin is talking about.
So that the difference is it's kind of confusing, because you basically hear the same thing, but when you're doing a legislative decision, you do a public hearing, you want public input, and you want public clamor. You want to hear everything there is about what law you're passing. Once it becomes an administrative position, public clamor, it doesn't matter if there's 200,000 people out there yelling no, you have to agree to do it administratively, but you can still take input for the purpose of applying the facts for those mitigating circumstances you need to mitigate. So, it sounds like it's public clamor again, so to speak, but it's not. They're distinctively different, even though practically they're the same.
Well, Justin, let me ask you this, because I'm not sure if I understand this right. So, let's say we do change this, instead of the transient nature to 29 days, we put the actual number in there.
Okay?
Can they come and ask for a conditional use permit for more?
No, because you've limited it to that.
To that in the ordinance.
Is for other factors you may wish to put. If you're gonna make this a conditional use permit ordinance, then it might be factors of, we are gonna require you to put trees between this property and this property so that you can muffle the noise or muffle the site, or we're gonna require you to do this because it's gonna have an adverse impact on this. So you can bring in things that mitigate those factors that you list in your ordinance that says we look at to determine if the mitigation needs to occur. It's clear as mud. It's kind of hard to explain, but.
And just to be clear, right now it's just fully permitted.
Yeah.
With a 14-day limit. And so this ordinance would make it a little more restrictive on RV parks and would require a conditional use permit, giving the city the ability to mitigate some problems. Like right now, if an RV park comes in, if it's in a highway service zone, which is where they have to be, we have to grant it, administratively, as long as they fit all of the other city code. So this would give us the ability to say, we're concerned about some of the impacts of this RV park. It is in a highway service zone, but it happens to be right next to XYZ, therefore the city is concerned about these problems. And assuming that we can come up with a way to mitigate those or put conditions on them that would resolve those problems, then you grant the conditional use permit.
You know, if you do the 29 days, most people come during the summer. If they're gonna spend time with the parks and wherever not, and trail riding, I don't know, that's.
Oh, yeah.
But.
Yeah, and I think at that point, really all you're excluding, and who knows how many people this is, are people that are gonna wanna come for the season. You know what I'm saying? If they're working seasonally or something like that, then they would have to move on. But yeah, people that are coming to tour the parks, that's gonna give them 4.5 weeks or whatever 29 days comes out to be.
And they are still hopefully spending money here too.
There's been some approach to me about people that are working at Bryan Head, and we have limited lodging here, and Bryan Head is too, and they were kind of hoping that we consider, I believe is like 90 days, I think is what they were hoping to accommodate their work schedules. So I guess there's that element that, and I guess that'd still be fairly temporary, but they would be contributing to the community, I would think.
And I am uncomfortable with not opening it up for comment, but I also realize that we did have a public hearing last council meeting about this topic and opportunity to give all the input from the public at that time. I mean, the only other question is just playing out a scenario, is if this timeline was determined, but then there were concerns from the community with the conditional use, agreement, the city would then be able to remove that if it were deemed, a negative impact on the community.
No, they would have to violate the permit you
They would
gave
have
them.
to, yeah, they have to violate the permit.
These guys right now they're a permitted use
Right.
for that. It isn't, we're not they're under no conditional use permit. They are a permitted use in that zone.
And
For
they will be-
14 days.
They will be permitted use.
Right, under 14 days, but
Forevermore
it's a
now.
permitted use.
It's done. So if.
All we're gonna do is change the permitted use time limit from 14 days to whatever we decide.
Right, and so this is a question about non-conforming, because if this were to pass tonight in modified form or as it stands, the current RV parks would now be non-conforming, or would they?
No, they wouldn't, because you go the one way,
Your grandfather,
conforming, you go the other way and you're non-conforming and grandfathered. So if we went to a shorter time period, said 7 days,
Mhm.
then they would still have a right to their 14 days, because they're grandfathered in, their usage is grandfathered in. But if we go to 29 days, they can enjoy the benefit of the move the other direction.
So they'd enjoy the benefit of move to 29 days.
Correct.
Wouldn't have to come in and apply for a conditional use permit because they are non-conforming. They were there before the ordinance was changed.
That's
I just want to clarify that. So I would think that if the council wanted to do that, and let me get Justin's opinion on this, I would say you leave the sentence about transient nature, just leave it alone, and add it in the definition of what transient is, or this chapter is interpreted as X amount of days or less.
You can define it that way, sure.
And
So in our definitions, it would be 29 days
Or whatever we
Or
decide.
whatever.
yeah.
yeah, 29 days or less is the definition of transient,
just
and then it,
leave the transient all out of it, or just definition as, or
yeah, I mean,
definition as
so
transient?
you could do it one of two things. You could do it in that definition, or where it says of a transient nature, get rid of transient nature and just say lodging of 29 days or less. Because right now it says 14 days or less there. You could do it in one of two places, and I think it would accomplish it.
The nice thing about defining your words and then using that word is you can use transient in other places. But if you're gonna use transient in other places and it doesn't fit and you define it as 29 days, so you need to make sure that if you're gonna define transient as 29 days, then everywhere out, you replace the word transient as you go through, AKA 29 days.
Well, that's why I said for this chapter, it is interpreted as 29 days.
So if there's transient throughout there, anywhere else,
Right.
that says 29 days. But if not, and that's the only place it is, then you're fine.
Question real quick here, not to kind of tweak or change it just a little bit here, jumping up to where it says, building, you can, by building of, being instructed there on not more than 1 year. The way that's worded to me is, so if they're building in St. George or Cedar, they can come stay here, right? Matter?
So first of all, what we're talking about is it says, so it says occupied RVs, living in an RV, is not permitted, right at the top of the page there. Whoop, back down just a tad, right there. Number 1, under A, occupied RVs shall not be permitted in Parowan, Utah, except under the following conditions.
Correct.
1, you're located in an RV park. 2, while temporarily located while a main building is being constructed thereon.
But does that mean, so there's no housing available over in Cedar, they're gonna come here and
No.
stay and fill the
No,
parking lot?
No, 'cause
They're
it
on.
says when
No,
temporarily
they're on.
located
So.
on a lot.
They're
No,
on,
it
like,
Okay.
says they're
While the
on,
main
so
building
when
is-
it says they're on, they park on that lot and they build on that.
On-
Okay, on the
They're
lot,
on.
okay, that's not in the park.
No,
And they have to
no.
have a
Okay.
building.
And just to continue on,
All right.
they have to have a
All right.
valid, building permit that's not unexpired or revoked, and then their building permit has to have all that stuff, so.
All right, so I'd like to entertain a motion if there's not any other discussion on this, and we can also still discuss even after the motion's made.
Well, I think we need to determine a length, a time frame, to define the transient.
So Rochelle, you can make your motion and say 29 days, or 14 days, or 21 days, or whatever you want. And then call for a second, and see if everybody agrees or not agrees.
And I know, I mean, just from being on economic development, I know Susan Seppi was in one of the meetings years ago. We were just saying, we really need an RV park. And it was almost like a race for the pennant with people saying they were gonna do one. And so, I mean, I'm really grateful the RV park is here. And I know over the time, I mean, there's obviously been some challenges and things, but this amenity is really great for our community, and I know that. Again, we were sitting around a table at least once talking about how great this would be for our community.
So if we were to set a time frame, I'm asking you, Justin, and they decided that it didn't work out, can you go back and change? You can go and amend this ordinance again, can't you, to a shorter time?
But they're grandfathered
But
in.
they're
But they would be
grandfathered in.
Would they be
grandfathered in.
grandfathered in?
Yeah,
So
so
they
we
get
wouldn't
29 days forever.
So,
We could go back and extend it
but,
to a
yeah,
longer time.
Right,
We can't go
right.
back the
We
other
can go
way.
back, but that wouldn't affect that, what
Right.
RV parks are
That-
here.
You can only take it back from any future development. You
I got
can't
it,
take
I
back
got it, Jim, I got it.
from- I was talking to Matt.
I'll make a motion that we accept the RV Park Extended Stay Ordinance 2023-01-02 with the date of 29 days and take the transient nature out.
Would you say also in that motion that you add that transient definition with,
And yes, add that transient definition.
including the 29 days, okay? Because that's not in there, the whole definitions.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call vote?
David Burton, aye.
Rochelle Topham, aye.
Sharon Downey, aye.
Matt Gale, aye.
Jim Shirtliff, aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, now moving from our action meeting into our work meeting, item number 11. And I apologize right off the bat, I didn't realize Laura lived here. I met her for the first time this evening, but we've talked on the phone several times. But Laura McCord is going to tell us about recycling pickup in Parowan.
Hi, thanks for having me. Laura McCord, resident. I would also just add, I have a master's in sustainability management, and I lead sustainability efforts for a $7 billion distributor based out of Illinois. I only share that to hopefully add a little bit of credibility to what I'm going to present tonight. So, for me, recycling is very important. I know that there's definitely mixed reviews out there. Some people are passionate about it, some people are not. I'm definitely not here to debate the merits of recycling. I just wanted to offer an opportunity for those that are interested. You can go to the next slide. So I did find an organization called Recyclops that offers curbside recycling of paper, plastic, aluminum, and cardboard and glass. They currently service Enoch and Cedar City. And if we can get 50 residents signed up here in Parowan, then they will come and offer that service to us. I know there will be some questions about pricing, so I shared the pricing for Cedar City, because obviously we can't get the pricing until we know that we have the 50 residents here. So on the next slide, I just created a little flyer that I also printed out that shows the website where you can sign up for it. you sign up, it says, hey, enter your address, it's gonna tell you that service is not available in your area, but you wanna be notified, you click yes, and then that is what pops up, and you're just simply putting in your name, your address, your contact information. So this way they can let you know that it's available once we hit 50 people. So that is it. I guess my ask would be, for any kind of support that we can get, because right now I post it on Facebook and I look like a scammer, you know, because it's just like, hey, we need 50 homes. So
I've seen you on there.
okay.
Not that I thought that you were a scammer,
I know.
but I have seen you post about this on Facebook.
So, if there's anything we could do, like posting it someplace in any, documents that we have, or something that just says, hey, if you're interested, again, it's completely optional, don't wanna debate it, I just wanna share it as an opportunity for those residents that are passionate about it. The next slide is not worth sharing, it was just if anybody did wanna argue with me, I was gonna put it up, but it's okay. So, that was it, I just have flyers if anybody's interested, and you can just scan the QR code as well. Do you need anything else from me?
No, and I've been asked several times about recycling, so I'm really grateful for that. You're here with a solution for our town. Does the council have any questions before, she looks like she's trying to sit down. Don't sit down yet. Does anyone have any questions?
I was just gonna add, you know, I was asked why we were potentially promoting a private business, which we're not in the business of doing that. But I thought it would be appropriate to have this at least shared. I'm sure there's other companies, I don't know, I'm not sure. In fact, I was surprised that there was even one that offered this. The city does not offer any recycling. In fact, it isn't even an option to us. The county doesn't offer any recycling, and that's who processes our refuse. That's who processes our trash. It is just not simply available on to the city on a utility level. So, when making sure I get your name right.
Laura.
Laura, yes, right there, my phone was over it.
It's okay.
When Laura reached out, I said, listen, we don't offer this, it's just not an option, and she said, there are some private businesses, and if we can get enough people, so that's why we thought maybe it'd be a good idea to give her an opportunity to put it out there. If enough people wanted to do it, then there is an option. The city's not against recycling, there's no way the city can do it, so at least this would be an option if enough people wanted to band together. And if this private company, if there's enough of people that are interested and they want to provide that service, we wish them the best, and but it wouldn't be sponsored by the city.
There's nothing in our ordinance or anything that would discourage that, right?
Right.
Okay.
It's
It's a private business,
That's what
it's
I
like that Vibrant cans.
Yeah.
But I would hate for people to think that this is the city doing this, because then if it falls through or something, then they're like, what's wrong, what happened to our recycling? We'd be like, this wasn't our project to start with, we wish them the best, but it is not the city thing.
We had recycling as far as another company come in, we had bins sitting in the city, but they would just cut too cost effective, I think, wasn't it?
There was
Nobody was
there was
using
no
them. No
market
one-
for the recycle.
Yeah.
It was,
That's what I mean.
so it was actually based out of, Washington County there was a company that was servicing Washington County. All of the recyclables were being taken to Vegas, and most of it ended up going to China. China stopped buying it, which killed the market, and the company Washington County that had an active throughout the county program had to stop that. The recycling bins that were here were being picked up and taken to Washington County, which they were going farther. So it just isn't an option for the city to do, but if a private company wants to do it, more power to them, but it is not, the city's, sponsored thing.
And I would just add, I don't know this company, I don't work for this company, I don't get any spiffs from this company, I don't make any money off of them, I don't get commission off of it, nothing, I just wanna recycle. So, just wanna throw that out.
It's not a pyramid scheme, is what you're saying.
It is not a pyramid.
And learning about, how our trash is handled here, and knowing how much bulk it basically pulls out of your garbage to pull out the recyclables, I thought if it could help with how many times we have to run back and forth to the landfill, that it would definitely be something to at least bring into discussion, because when I started sorting my recycling years ago, which I haven't since I've lived here, I was shocked to find that my garbage that actually went out into the can was half, if not less. So
Same here.
it's encouraging to think about what we wouldn't be hauling back and forth to the landfill.
So you need 50 to justify doing
Yep.
this. Now, is there a number that would, allow for a central,
They,
location?
they don't have a big enough truck to do a central, I don't
Okay.
think, like, they don't have like a dump kind of.
Oh, so they don't
So like
have
you just
that,
get a bag,
so that's not an option. They come pick those bags up individually.
yeah.
Where are they treating it, processing it, do you know?
St. George is where they
Okay.
bring it. So, and I just thought, since they're already working in Cedar and Enoch, maybe that helped bring some credibility to the program as well.
Well, I'm a big believer in businesses thriving, and working where government can't necessarily do it. And if they can make a go of it, make a profit at it, more power to them.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, work meeting item number 12, hard surface ordinance discussion. Jamie Bonnet from the Planning and Zoning Committee.
How are you guys? Judy should have emailed you guys all of the paperwork on that. Did you guys all get it? Hopefully. Nobody got it? Oh, did you email me? You just emailed me. Oh, okay, so I have it. I don't know if Callie, can you pull up the ordinance for us, 15-52-030? They have seen it though. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We tabled
I've
it in
seen that,
December,
okay.
yeah.
I just thought,
Yeah, I
thought maybe
did
it would
see that
come to
too.
the
Right,
packet.
Sorry, Judy, didn't mean to bring you to the back
That's-
on no reason. 15-52-030.
I thought I saw it somewhere at some point. It came in our packet in another meeting, but then we struck it from the,
Yeah, I know, they did, because she wasn't.
yeah. But you should have got it on your email. You should have got it in there.
I said,
Do you want me to forward it to you? I have it right here. There you go. No, I'm sorry. Yep, it's that right there. Perfect. Okay, so this is our current ordinance, and then, in the red is the areas that we would like to change. So if you scroll down a little bit, right there, it says Section 3 was voted to be taken out. We actually, Judy caught it, we were actually wanting to leave that part in, so that's non-applicable, because that's for residential lots, and then the above was for commercial. We just thought it was a repeat. So you guys can ignore that part. And then if you scroll down a little bit, it's actual right there. So these are the changes that we are proposing for your guys' input, thoughts, with hard surface on that. Do you want me to read them, or are you guys good? I'll just let you read over it really fast.
Go ahead and read it.
Okay. All right, surfacing. Each off-street parking lot shall be surfaced with a hard surface. Parking lots serving a high volume of traffic shall be surfaced in such a way to provide dustless surface. The parking area shall be graded as to dispose of all surface water. If such water is to be carried in adjacent streets, it shall be piped under sidewalks. Parking facility will be maintained in good condition and in accordance with the provisions of this ordinance. See hard surface definition under 15-4-50. So we actually got, when Cleve was here, he's the one that actually told us to stick it in the definition right there. So that's why we were recommended to do that. And then if you jump down to 3, it says landscaping. All areas not covered by hard surface parking in the parking facility shall be landscaped. Zero landscaping or drip systems are encouraged. So we have sent this over to legal twice now and have got their advice on it and then made their changes. And then there's also one more change. If you scroll all the way down, it's number 50 in the second set of ordinances. of the definitions.
Number 50.
On the second set.
Keep going.
Okay, so then it says hard surface. Hard surface means asphalt, concrete, brick, or aggregate with I can't ever say that word, you guys. Whatever, however you pronounce that, you can. Okay. Or cement by being in compliance with Parowan City's engineering standards and having an overall depth of 6.0 inches, or as approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, other permanent types of surfacing which prevents the raising of dust or loose particles. So that's the definition that we're recommending for hard surface. And that would be it. So this would be for all commercial lots, especially in highway services.
So the only concern I had is going back to the previous, and not to, point out something, but don't we have a state code now that says you can't require landscaping for commercial?
So we looked into that, because there is, Judy let us know of it, and it says that you can't, provide, you have to plant this many trees, you have to plant this kind of bushes. It says that you can just encourage it.
You couldn't tell them what to have.
Yeah, you can't tell them,
Yeah.
you have to have X amount of trees, or you can only do this. It says that you
Just
sure can encourage it
landscape.
to be done.
Yeah,
Yep.
I remember that.
So that is compliant with the state right there.
Okay. So this is just a discussion point, because we're in work, we're not voting on this
Yep.
this evening. So she's here to answer questions that you have, and she and the Planning and Zoning Committee have worked really hard on this, so.
For months and months, I think you guys.
Since we're talking an ordinance, we'll need a public hearing. Did Planning Commission have a public hearing?
Not yet. We're waiting, because we have a couple other ordinances that we want to do it all together.
Okay.
I mean, if that's something the council wants to move on, obviously.
And just to point out, I've been sitting at a lot of tables in the past year, and ordinances are a hot topic. Some cities have hired codifiers that are full-time going through their ordinances. They've gone to different services that are helping them as well. So, just looking at this ordinance and knowing how many months I think it came up, I'm not gonna pick on Councilman Gale, but he brought up the topic of 200 and kind of working on making that a little more uniform, and I think that's where this started.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and I think it's been almost a year.
It's been it's been a while.
So just know the amount of effort
Yeah.
that goes into thinking about these things, I guess is kind of my point, and that we're not alone in that. Ordinances are often in response to, either public feedback, or sometimes things that come through that we realize, we see something, just like the water ordinance, where we were like, oh. So appreciate planning and zoning and the hard work they've put into hard surface.
Jamie, maybe you ought to explain where Parowan City's engineering standards.
So we called Rosenberg and Associates and just kind of asked them that, the depth and everything, because that was a question that came up with the lawyers, and so that's what the advice that we were given on that.
David, I'm just kind of follow up on that. Wouldn't engineering standards also mean to the extent as if it's like a UDOT, you know what I'm saying, that so they had to go to their standards, so it's generic, but it's.
Exactly.
So,
I
it
think
covers both ours and then theirs, because they have higher than we.
Yeah, and I think we deferred to the county engineer.
Correct.
Right.
That's what I mean.
And
I was gonna say, on a building permit, we refer to the county, on a commercial, they have to be architecturally engineered plans on a commercial development anyways, and then that gets reviewed by the city engineer, which we contract out to Rosenberg, which she mentioned. And so, in the cases of these, it's actually two engineers, or an architect / engineer has designed it, and then the city engineer looks at it to see if it's up to standards. I like that it is vague, but it does mention our standards there. So.
Well, and then like Matt says, you've got UDOT that comes in with their standards if it's on in the, what do we call this?
Roads.
Yeah, the highway service
Services,
or
yeah.
something, yeah.
And we all kind of voted to make it kind of vague and not so much detailed, so it can just be brought back to the engineers and stuff like that if it changes.
And can you confirm, this does or does not require asphalt. When it says asphalt, concrete, brick, or aggregate with an asphaltic or cement binder, meaning you couldn't just do a parking lot with road base.
Correct.
That was kind of talked around, is that a burden? You know, road base, after a while, can turn into a very dusty thing, which is kind of what this is trying to, but there was a fairly active discussion about that.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the rocks that they put in?
So like the gravel and stuff like
Yeah.
that, so they wouldn't be allowed to do that with the gravel. If you look right now on like the Jensen's property and stuff like that, it's got,
That's what I was
it's got big old like mud holes and stuff like that. So this is just kind of deferring that away. So they would not be able to do that with this new ordinance code.
I just wanted more
Yeah, no
clarify
problem.
that because of the-
Yeah.
Retention. Tell us number 18.
Okay. Any other questions? So this will go for public hearing, and then we'll see it again for vote, the meeting following that. So that'll be the second meeting in February that we'll be voting on this.
Okay.
Have any other questions about it?
All right,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Okay, now moving to item number 13, the carbon-free power project update by Jeremy Franklin, our power superintendent.
Okay, most of you guys have been through the bumpy road of the carbon-free power project, but since there's a few new members, I just kind of wanted to start with what the project is, then move to where we're at, and then on to where we're going. So, the carbon-free power project is a UAMPS project, which is a nuclear project to be sited in near Idaho Falls on the Idaho National Laboratory property, which is owned by the Department of Energy. The plant consists of 6 NuScale modular reactors, with each having an output of 77 megawatts, so a 462 megawatt total plant. It's scheduled to come online in 2029-2030 timeframe. Since this is a first-of-a-kind technology, the licensing and construction obviously takes a large amount of time to come to fruition. So, however, this year, I think in July, the NuScale design was certified by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, making it the first small modular reactor approved for the U.S., for use in the U.S. And where we are at now, the current budget has got us to the Class 3 project cost estimate provided by Fluor, who's the engineering and construction contractor. And based on the Class 3 estimate with the DOE cost-sharing payments, the total DOE contribution is $1.4 billion when it's all said and done. And then with the estimated Inflation Reduction Act and benefits of the operating cost estimate, the estimated cost of energy from the project is projected to be at $89 a megawatt hour, in July 2022 dollars. So if you can recall, when we started this part of this budget, the price target we were looking for was $58 per megawatt hour. So since the project has come back at $89, that does constitute an economic competitiveness test failure, meaning that UAMPS's project management committee could decide to withdraw from the project and request reimbursement from the reactor developer. So it wouldn't be 100% reimbursed, it'd be reimbursement on the development cost portion of it, but majority of it would be a reimbursement. As we sat around the UAMPS board and discussed what caused the prices to go up, obviously inflation, cost of carbon steel has gone up 300-something% over the last 2 years, interest rates, and we thought, if anybody's going to build a gas plant, any other kind of plant at this time right now, they're going to see increased costs. So we still feel like this new dollar figure is within realm. So currently, the project is about 25% subscribed, which is about just under 116 megawatts. So with the cost increase and the subscription level being low, UAMPS has amended the development cost reimbursement agreement with NuScale to put the cost at $89 in July 2022 $2022, and added a subscription target of 80% subscription, or about 370 megawatts, for this next year of the budget and plan of finance that we need to vote on, the next council meeting. So if the project cost does come in above the $89, or we do not have 80%, then we could seek reimbursement at that time. So the new budget, for the next year has a cost exposure to the participants of about $700,000, in which Parowan is 2.6% of that, based on our entitlement of the project, which accounts to about $18,000. So the hope is that we have a little bit of exposure to get us through the next year to see where the plant is. If it's not an 80% subscription, there's a good chance the plant doesn't continue. So since we're at the time where we need a budget amendment, we are at an off-ramp, so we do have the right to withdraw from this project. If we would withdraw on our own, then we have to pay the costs that we've incurred up to the development. If UAMPS withdraws as a group, then we get the reimbursement. Our cost to withdraw is around $740,000. So we have three options. We can withdraw, reduce, or just stay the course. Currently, we're subscribed at 3 megawatts. Last week at Power Board, we discussed the option of reducing down to 2 megawatts from the 3. Currently, we receive about 2 megawatts from the Hunter power plant, and this nuclear plant was kind of designed to replace your coal as coal goes away. And so, but we looked at the $58 price target and thought, well, let's oversubscribe a little, and as if we grow, then we're covered. But with the new $89 price tag, I just kind of felt like if we subscribe at 3 megawatts, we're putting a lot of our eggs in one basket. Even with the Hunter project at 2 megawatts in our Colorado River, we're still surplus energy a lot of hours. So we bump to 3, then we're going to be even more surplus until we grow. So I, along with the Power Board, decided that the best thing to do would be to reduce to the 2 megawatts for this next phase. That way, if it does fail the ECT, our costs would be lower. If we decide to withdraw, our costs would also be lower than staying at 3. And just with all the new technologies that are coming along, I just feel like we need to be more diversified. I mean, we're seeing it in our power bills now that with our 2 resources, Colorado River's obviously having drought issues, Hunter's having coal delivery issues. We're not very diversified. We have, 75% of our resources in Hunter, and then Chris picks up the rest. So I think just for diversification purposes, and that we would be better to reduce to 2. So the next council meeting, UAMPS has requested we pass a resolution whichever way we decide to go. So I figured within the next 2 weeks, if there's any questions that come up, feel free to email me, call me, and I'd be glad to get the answers. So I know there's a lot of info in the email I sent you, which is probably, with all the acronyms they use, looks way foreign, so, but.
I was trying to Google things and make sense of it. I was trying to make sense of it the best that I could.
Yeah, so if you do go to cfppllc.com, that's the website, there's a lot of good information on that website.
Okay.
There's a lot of the stuff still going on at the site, the things moving forward. It's just, we need to get subscription, or the 116 megawatts of 14 Utah municipalities can't shoulder the $5 billion project, so.
And it's worth pointing out, even if we go from 3 megawatts down to 2, if something changes in the next year, and let's say we have a big explosion of growth or something like that, we can go in the next off-ramp period, we could bump it back up if we wanted to.
Yeah, as long as the project isn't subscribed at 462, going up is easy. You can always.
Well, can I just put in a couple of sentences, our discussion there? We're so heavy in Hunter, Dan will talk about the next point here, that Hunter's offline for us and we're buying surplus power, and Jeremy was feeling, or not surplus, but buying off the market, yeah. But Jeremy's feeling is if we're so heavy in this nuclear, And,
It doesn't leave options to
yeah,
purchase another
and so
resource.
if they go down or something happens, we're so heavy in that thing, we're gonna be in the same boat
Yeah.
with Hunter.
What if a hydrogen project comes along at $60 a megawatt hour, but we're already subscribed at 3, you know, we're stuck, we can't buy that 'cause
Jeremy, that's what I have a question, and I figured your expertise.
we'll see.
What is this new energy they're referring to that is unlimited, and it isn't the nuclear, it's something else?
So they're looking at a hydrogen, maybe that, like, IPP's, gonna, you know, switch to natural gas in 2025 with a hydrogen adder to that, in hopes to eventually get the technology farther along to where there'll be 100%, hydrogen, production.
So you think it's hydrogen?
Hydrogen's my
That's
guess.
the
It's kind of
salt
a-
caverns?
Yeah, yep, they'll.
So that's a specific kind of hydrogen, that's green hydrogen.
Yes,
Right.
correct, but they're making.
But that's the one that they're
hydrogen-
claiming's gonna be,
They put it in the
silver
ground,
bullet.
they use it as a gigantic battery, when they
Yeah,
have
but
the
the
excess,
hydrogen
they,
also
yeah.
is making from water.
Yeah,
Water.
and then that
Oh,
technology's
water.
not
But they
there
have
yet,
enough
but
water
it's,
to make it.
they're working on
But
it.
the cost of it is too much right
Yeah,
now, so.
okay, maybe that's the one. I've just heard, you know, alluding to this new unlimited source.
Yeah, other than hydrogen, I mean, obviously solar and wind, but
One other thing to point out, unlike with IPP, we have the ability to sell our, entitlement of IPP power to any other UAMPS or to California or whatever. With this project, that mechanism isn't there yet, it potentially could be, but if we're oversubscribed, it's not like we can just easily just sell that oversubscribed power, at
Well-
least, that's not there yet.
What Jeremy explained to me is, okay, we're buying this 89 or whatever, and then, but we're over surpluses, but we're selling it as what, 40?
yeah, the surplus,
So
I
we're
mean,
losing money right
the
now.
last month or two, the surplus market's been more like the 160 range, but typically, I mean, your surplus market's in the 40 range, 4 cents a kilowatt hour, or KW, so, I mean, if the market was gonna stay high, you'd be good to be surplus, but as more renewables come on, and I think the market will level out some, so you would be losing money by being so much surplus. If you could predict the market, then it'd be easy, but.
Yeah, we'd be rich.
If we could predict it.
Well, and just, going to Fillmore with Jeremy, and he, I say lives, breathes, eats and sleeps this, and I mean, his recommendation in asking all the questions I had is really sound. I mean, we're more than covered, but also I believe, as he's saying, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, and we've got a lot of people trying to solve this, and so, and I think it's, you know, for what I learned, and the video is really helpful. Like, if you go watch the video, it'll get you all caught up on the terminology. It does really help a lot.
Yeah.
So appreciate everything that you...
And I've talked to UAP staff, Kelton, the scheduler guy that looks at our load and forecast all the time, and he kinda reassured me that, yeah, you're a little oversubscribed, you know, it's not. So I think at this time, just with
And
so
you
much changing.
did say it, but I want to reiterate that, if I remember right, the Power Board did recommend, go with your recommendation
Yes,
of
they
two,
did recommend to drop
to
to
drop to
2.
two.
So we'll see a resolution to sign next meeting.
Yes, yeah, UAPS has it in that email, but I'll provide it, and then, but I wanted to make sure we had them 2 weeks between. There's a lot of information in that email that I could answer any questions, and if I can't,
But
UAPS
I
definitely
don't know if you said this or not, maybe you did, but we do have the next off-ramp would be January of next year.
24th.
It's January 2024,
24th.
absolutely, yes.
That's,
And that-
that's the critical one.
That's a critical one, and if they do not have, they've got in the thing, they do not have, what, 80%
service.
of subscribers, that
Yeah.
means the UAMs
Which-
will drop the whole thing.
Which is ambitious. I mean, we've been at 25% for how many
Or-
years, you know?
As long as I've been on,
Yeah,
yeah.
but these market prices lately, I think they'll see some movement, and I think they have somebody that they're multiple.
What's that percentage, Matt?
Do what?
Percentage that they're gonna mandate that they have?
80%.
80%
80?
subscribers.
And we're at 25.
We're-
So
See, the 80%, that protects us.
Yeah,
Well, that
that's
means UAMs
for
will
us.
pull out as a entity, the whole,
Okay.
whole,
Will be re-
The
not
next,
just Parowan, but UAMs.
And there's what, 27
23.
cities, 23?
If they don't have 80.
If they don't have
Yeah.
80, and also if it
That-
raises above 89, right?
Okay.
yeah, if the price comes in above 89
Then
in
it's,
2022 dollars.
Yes.
So
Kind of.
what that conversion is, I'm not sure. but I do think that's an ambitious goal, but it does give us protection and
But
this
I
next
hope it
phase.
does, yeah.
This next phase is fairly cheap, that's what we're hoping to get through. After this next off-ramp, prices, I mean, you get to the, almost proceed to construction and your prices go way up, so without subscription there, it's just not feasible.
And power is
Unfortunately.
a constant change.
Yeah. Yep, and that $89, is life of plant too, I mean, that's from day one of taking energy to decommissioning, which it currently has a 40-year term
Oh.
and could be renewed, has a 99-year lease on the DOE property and could be renewed for another 20 or 40 years. We've had Hunter since 1980.
Oh.
And, and it's been awesome, but every resource eventually has some issues, and we're experiencing that, which Dan and I will hit on in the next item.
All right, that segues us into the next item, unless the council have any other questions of Jeremy on this one.
Kelly,
Okay,
could you
we'll
put
go.
up that?
So,
Thank you,
item
Jeremy.
14 is the power
Thanks,
cost
Jeremy.
assessment. Thank you, Jeremy. I didn't know if you wanted to stay. Okay, all right.
May not wanna be here for this one, no, anyway.
Maybe if you could just zoom a little bit, not all the way in, 'cause it'll cut off the right side. So just zoom out,
Okay.
'cause the right side is the scary part.
All or not.
So just so you know, just so we know what we're looking at, this is, Parowan City Power Department. Of course, we get our power through UAMPS, through the projects that we're subscribed to, and we pay a wholesale rate and for the power that we sell. And we have our base rate. In fact, we haven't adjusted our base rate for a long time. We've employed a company to do a base rate study. And the yellow line that you're looking at is that's our bill. I wanna make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about. That's not power usage, that's dollars that we pay, right? So you see some seasonality and some fluctuation. That is due to either the price that we're paying and also the amount of power that is being consumed within the city. This has been stable for a long time. Jeremy talked about, Hunter, they've just been this rock star for us with the coal plant, which is up in Emery County. And it typically hovers around $50,000. It goes up and down and maybe 55. We're getting close to averaging 60, 65 as the city grows and things like that. But if you look at the right side of that scale, you'll see what's been keeping Jeremy up at night and Judy and myself. Our power bill has been fluctuating massively. And the reason is as we've had, he mentioned the two plants that we get the majority of our power from. One is Hunter, which is coal-fired. They've been having coal delivery problems, so they're only running the plant on an on and off basis.
High load hours, so 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Right. You've heard about the coal fire that's up there. They're also having problems getting coal delivered to the plant for different supply chain issues, which we won't go into. So when we're not able to get power supplied by them, we have to buy that power through UAMPS on the market. And the majority of that power comes from natural gas, and natural gas prices themselves have been fluctuating all over the place. We do get power from the other source is the CRISPR, which is the Colorado River. We all know what's going on with the Colorado River. You look at Lake Powell, you look at the dam, they talk about the inlets and whether the power's, that's our other source of main power. So when we're not able to get power through those, we're buying on the market, and the market just happens to be incredibly turbulent at this point. I'm not trying to scare anybody. What I'm trying to say is this last bill that we got was $237,000. We're used to bills like 50 or 60.
No, Dan, I wanna just add there too, it's not just Parowan City it's also Rocky Mountain, it's.
Oh, yeah.
They're all doing
It's
it.
not just, everybody's getting the same problem.
We're being exposed to this, and in months like that, we're losing money before we even consider our own overhead. Meaning, we're not even covering our wholesale cost before we start factoring in all of our guys and our overhead, administration and trucks and all that stuff. So,
You wanna tell them what the blue line is?
the blue line is a moving average. And so you can see how the blue line trails it, but again, that average, so that rolling average is Excel calculated, is like 180,000, right? So this means we're operating in the red, burning cash, if you will, rather than coal. We're burning cash. Sorry for the metaphor. But, the company that's doing our study, our rate-based study, suggested doing what a lot of utility companies and whether it be a large utility company, you can insert the name of any large utility company that does power, or whether it be some of the cities, they put into place a mechanism called a power cost adjustment factor. What that does is we have our base rate, and what's our base rate per kilo? Our per meter base, and then you have your, then they would put on the bill a power cost adjustment rate. And so, and the way it was proposed to us, recommended to us, was that we would do a 6-month look back, a 6-month moving average. Now that wouldn't be the blue line, because this blue line I think is literally like a 2-month average or something. But we would do a 6-month average, meaning that if Parowan City had a spike in its wholesale cost, that would be ultimately passed on to the customer, but it would be smoothed out over a 6-month of time. So your customer bills wouldn't be bouncing, even though the city's bill would be bouncing, but it would be recuperated. That's better than just adjusting your entire base rate, and which is a larger process, which you don't do very often. And by the way, we haven't adjusted our base rate for a long time. We'll see what the results of the study is on our base rate. So essentially, you're talking two different things: base rate, which we're going to get a report back. We have no idea what it's going to say, but we would like to consider implementing a power cost adjustment, which would pass that on. I don't know what else we do. Our power company is going to be, going to burn cash till it gets to a problematic state otherwise. Go ahead.
I will just add real quick that the future market prices that I've seen, I think we're through the worst of it for the next 5 to 6 months. But if we have the PCA in place, a lot of months we won't even charge it. If it's, if our costs are covered, you'll never see a difference on your bill. But when we do have that next spike, at least we can pass it on to the consumer, who, is really the ones that...
Jeremy, when was the last power rate adjustment?
As far as I know, before my time, and I've been here 17 years. But I'm not certain on that. Judy? Yeah. I don't remember having any rate increase since I started working here. Definitely not since I've been the superintendent in the last 6 years.
So what Jeremy's saying is, we hope that yellow point, that's the bill we just barely got. Hopefully that's the high water mark, but we do expect kind of extreme volatility for a while.
Yeah. One reason we're running Hunter only part-time is trying to stockpile coal for summer, because that's when your prices are normally high, but they're way out of balance right now. Today, I saw market prices at like 160. December, I saw them in the $270, $300 megawatt hour range, but the future market outlook for tomorrow is down to 70. So if it stays on that trend, we'll be looking pretty good. But I think if we even have it implemented, at least when it happens, we can take advantage of it. We may not for a year, who knows, but at least it's there. And I don't know what it would take to, just a resolution or how we would go about. There's a bunch of cities already have them in UAMs, and a bunch of cities are looking at them also. But yeah, the UFS that's doing our rate study has a good spreadsheet on how to do it, how to implement it. It's just how to decide how to.
And one of the cities that we looked at, they pass it on a direct one-to-one basis that month, the following month.
Yeah, so say your regular kilowatt hour rate is 9 cents, and they see the spike, their kilowatt hour rate could basically be up to like 13 cents across the board, or 11, you know, depending if it's a 2 cent or 4 cent increase, but.
Which we like the idea of the smoothing average,
More gradual.
acting as a shock absorber, so our customers aren't exposed to spikes. Because what if that spike happened to happen the same month that you left town and left your heaters on and your lights on accident, you know? We like the idea of having it smoothed out if we were to do it, but.
We just can't keep subsidizing.
Right,
The power bill.
we're dipping into, the last two to 3 months, we've been using reserves a little bit. And that can't go on forever. So, Dan, did we ever really figure out what we needed to do? I mean, does it need to be an ordinance?
No, and I reached out to Justin, and then it was only, yesterday or this morning, I sent you the cities to look at, but
Yes,
there's other cities.
I tried to pull those. That was why I was a little late today, because
Yeah.
I asked Washington City to send me theirs. They sent it. I sat down to review it, and what they sent me was their adjusted schedule for net metering policy
Oh, nice.
for our solar panels. So then I went online and tried to find one to see kind of how they word it and how they adjust it. I looked and looked and looked for like 45 minutes. Finally said, well, I better get over there. So I couldn't find it. So I'll call Rusty back tomorrow and see.
I've looked also, it's hard to find them online. I agree, it's a pain,
So,
yeah.
I'll call Rusty tomorrow and
Yeah,
get it from her again. We can take a look at it. I think what you're suggesting here makes sense to me personally.
Yeah.
And all we need to do is adjust our resolution.
So Rick Hansen from Washington City, he's their power superintendent. He told me they had one for 5 or 6 years before he was the superintendent. So he didn't know how they implemented it, but they've had one for a while, and so.
Well, I knew Rusty, 'cause she's the economic planner and
Oh, nice.
called, and, yeah, in the translation, it didn't get the same translation.
Yeah, and Rick wasn't sure, so I didn't know who to call after him.
And we were debating, Jeremy and I earlier, about maybe just addressing this when we get the results back and look at a base rate study implementation, like when we're talking budget around June. But then the volatility just went nuts, and we're like, we're burning cash at a crazy rate. We've got to implement something sooner, so.
We kinda feel like normally we do rate adjustments in July with our fiscal budget, but this PCA might need to be pushed before that. So, we'll do a little more research on the best way to implement it.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, moving now to item 15, Connex boxes is building material discussion. This will be Dan Jessen.
Okay, so this is a little getting a little bit the cart before the horse, but I felt like it was valuable to do it in this case. Recently, the Planning Commission has been considering, there's been building permits that have come in front of the Planning Commission which utilize the Connex box within the construction of the home. Of course, we have our Connex box ordinance that there was bloodshed over that, and the question was, is there a difference as we talk about the use of Connex boxes as a building material within a home, different than a Connex box that's a storage? And it looked like there could be a lot of conversation, potentially opening up different areas that could potentially be slippery slopes. So it's going to take a lot of wordsmithing to potentially make that, to get it ready where it could be a usable thing. But knowing how much we may be playing with fire from a public uproar thing, I said, you know what, I think in this case maybe it'd be a good idea to take it from the city council, see if there's any appetite to even talk about it. I just don't want planning and zoning to spend 6 months to have it thrown in the trash can, and then volunteers feeling like, why am I sitting on this board? Our illustrious commissioner, Marilyn Wood, is here, and I've seen that happen at the county where the county spent a lot of time, and then it finally got to the legislative body, and the legislative body says, we could have told you that we didn't like this, you know, you shouldn't have spent all that time. So, and I'm not trying to argue anything one way or the other, but let me kind of explain the concept and why it may or may not be different. There's been a couple applications. The one that's on my mind was a gentleman who wanted to build a really upscale, I would call it a barn-ominium, and it looks like it's a home, but it looks like a pole barn type scenario. And within the wings, you can't see them, it looks like a house, but inside the wings, inside the house, there's Connex boxes utilized. And the question was, it's not outside, it's not for storage, it's part of his building, it gives this usability, functionality type thing. Does it violate the ordinance? Planning Commission decided technically you can't use Connex boxes, so yes, it technically violates the ordinance. On the other hand, was this what the ordinance was written to discourage? What if a Connex box what if it was able to be used within a home and it is not, you can't even tell that it's a Connex box. So that's kind of the discussion, and I was going to bring a picture, but I didn't want to narrow it down to one thing, because you could use it in a bunch of different ways. I mean, I think you could go to any extreme to, you know, from, we let them use them in building, however, next thing you know, you have 5 Connex boxes stacked on each other, and it's this ultra-modern looking building. You know, and Planning Commission was very sensitive to the fact that's why I talk about wordsmithing it. We can't tell a builder of a single-family residence, we can't tell them their design, right, by Utah law. Now, the Historical Preservation Committee can, an HOA can say we want our subdivision to look this way or that way, but the city can't say, you know, a residence can look this way or that way. I think we could modify stuff with commercial stuff or whatever. But the question is, do we want to consider this? Is using Connex boxes within a building as building material, is that functionally the same thing as saying we're going to limit how many, you know, storage containers sit out in somebody's yard? So that's the discussion, and I just thought, you know what, let's bring it to the legislative body and see if there's an appetite for the discussion before we waste a bunch of time talking about it. So,
if they were used in this barn-dominium type thing, are the Connex boxes structurally part of the building?
So that's a good question, and I've heard and I've heard yes it was, and then I've heard but he could make it so that it wasn't. Regardless, we're gonna let the county. We're not in the business of saying we think this is structural or that isn't structural. That's why we have the county to do the inspections and make sure the engineerings are up to standard and all that stuff. So we've kind of stayed away from that. But where a sticking point, in fact, this is one of the things, and Heather can correct me if I'm wrong, which where we decided the other sticking point on this is it says you can't live in a Connex box. It says that in our code. So if it's used inside the house, what does live mean? Do you have to sleep in it? You know, is it part of the room over here or not? And you know what I mean? So it was like, yeah, technically we think it does violate the ordinance.
Yeah, no, at our last planning and zoning, I thought we had voted that, as a panel, we were going to put together, you know, a maximum of like 5 slides to kind of present to you what we were thinking and what we've been discussing. And we were going to, as a panel, put it together, as a panel, look at it before we came
to the council. You're absolutely right, and I realized that today, and I called Larry and I said, Larry, I forgot that the planning commission was going to have just a couple of examples, a couple of slides,
right,
before it came to the city council, and he says, you know what, I think you're good to go ahead and talk about it. And there's nothing to say that the planning commission can't still do that. I just wanted to bring it up for discussion, and I erred on that, but sorry I interrupted you, Heather.
No, that was it. I just was,
Yep.
And you wanted it to add for like the building material, living and business.
yes. So basically what, to separate, because if people, you know, I think our ordinance and our code talking about, shipping containers being only 20 feet and, having to be on a slab and all that for purposes of storage or as a workshop, because that was one of the things that we talked about was what does living mean? You have to sleep, you can't sleep in it, you can work in it, you can, you know, that kind of thing. But anyway, but I think what we were looking at and considering was separate from that, kind of separating the two, being, okay, if you want to have a storage container for storage purposes, or a workshop 20 foot in your backyard, but looking at like what Fizz did in Cedar City, which is made out of, I think, 3 shipping containers. Is that something, because of the cost of, wood and the prices and Connex box, building can be a less expensive means. And so that was and then looking at, I had shown examples of 100% covered, like the Villamore's, barn dominium that they wanted to make, fully covered, you can't even see it, to potentials of, I showed examples of it being partially cladded. And of course, you know, if someone's living in it, it's going to be insulated, it's going to have to live up to, in actuality, the IRC building codes, which are Appendix Q, and so, anyway. But, so I don't know if you guys want to just continue discussing it now, or if you want to wait for our little 5 slides, or whatever, but I was just, wanted to throw those 2 cents in.
Appreciate
And
it.
what does the county say on, or what do they say on
On using
Using.
them?
as far as inspecting them and stuff like, because I could think,
The county allows them,
do they?
and they just, somebody has to come forward with plans that make sense and that are structurally sound. These boxes are tough as nails.
Yeah, the only thing I could see is, okay, you get a strong wind or
But I believe we reached
they-
out to the county and they said,
tip over?
yeah, and Jake Hewlett, which is on our, planning commission, he's like, yeah, as long as it's done right and it's engineered right, there's no reason why you wouldn't consider doing it.
But that's the point, it has to be engineered.
Yeah.
And each one of those have to be engineered. For instance, some of those containers,
Rusted?
you've tried to bury them, and they collapse.
Yeah, they use them as a storm,
Yeah.
They
shelter.
use them as, yeah.
So,
And they said no, because that weighted that.
because they'll collapse and they'll wait. So, they have to be properly engineered. There was a big discussion I just had with another city last night. They're looking at it. Your biggest problem is the ordinance that you decided that says you can't relegate what they do. And so, if you're gonna permit them, I think those one of those areas where you better do them as a conditional use permit. That way you can control how they look a little bit more, how they look as far as how they present. House isn't gonna be very good looking if it's all Costco boxes with Costco written all over them. You know, and I think that's what you're trying to avoid. That was what you were trying to avoid last time.
So I just didn't want to go down that road, and I apologize, especially to the planning commission, because they wanted to have a couple of examples, and they kind of wanted to look at it, talk about it one time first, and then we threw it on the agenda. So I called Larry today and I said, should I pull it from the agenda till you can have that ready? And he said, I think you can have a discussion. The council's, you know, they're smart enough that they can look at that and understand it. So, I mean, we're not taking a vote, but is there any other comments as far as whether we have an appetite to look at this or not?
I think it's worth looking at. I wouldn't mind what the planning commission comes up with and presents.
We've had, some individuals, like you've said, that have come and made requests, so we've got to address it one way or another.
And I know the meeting I attended, it was that it's actually superior building material, and looking at seismic stuff at this point with like the Old Rock Church and things, I mean, I think learning more is important.
So are you saying we should use, no, I'm just joking.
Tear down the rock church and put it up with, Connex boxes? Yeah, with the rock church, yeah. Good idea.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
All right.
The old rock Connex box.
Well, I'm personally one that says no, because I don't wanna go through another Connex war. It got very personal, it got downright nasty, and I don't wanna see that again.
We know that, don't we?
All right. Moving now to item number 16, the water station update.
Judy, it should say Judy, not Dan. No, I'm just joking, but Judy's gonna help with this one.
Yeah, your name was on there a lot.
I know it. You'd think I was a
You like to talk.
narcissist or something.
You like to talk.
We switched, I think you know this, we switched from, having the water fill station to where we had to get codes in the office to a credit card station. So they could just put in their credit card, but then we had the problem where our, express bill pay wouldn't talk to the Aquaflow, so they could use their credit card. And so when I talked to them the first time, they said that it would be a $4,500 fix to get those two to talk. If you can see on your screen, I learned a lot more than I ever wanted to know about how credit card works, but, there's like 6 processes before it hits our bank. And the part that we're missing is the authorized.net gateway. And in order for
The middle.
Aquaflow to talk to Express Bill Pay, because Express Bill Pay has their own authorized.net gateway, it would be $4,500 to get those coordinated in.
One-time fee, or is it?
It's a one-time fee, but I started looking into it, and I talked to Chase, who is our current merchant account. We have 3 merchant accounts right now. We have one for the utility payments, we have one for non-billed, and then we have one for our courts. So we have 3 merchant accounts right now. When I talked to Chase, I finally got someone who could help me with this. He said that we can get another merchant account, that will give us that authorized.net gateway, and then it will give the API codes and transactions to Aquaflow so they can use their credit card. It will be a little, it's just a little more work on our end. Like with the courts, it doesn't automatically talk to Express Bill Pay either. So I have to go in manually every month and enter all the court payments. It would be the same thing with this. So it's not that big of, it's not worth $4,500 is what I'm saying.
So how much usage would this be?
I don't know, I can't
David,
imagine.
you know, or whatever, because you're farmers, or what?
Yeah, it's gonna, there's a need.
No, but I mean, as far as,
How much usage?
yeah, would they be paying the credit card every
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. I imagine, 'cause I don't
Yeah.
know how else you'd do it, because,
That's the only way they can get water out of the
Yeah,
credit
yeah.
card.
yeah.
But they did also say, Chase said that they would match our current, fee that we
Right.
have, and we have pretty good fees, but we could not, charge that separately, because then that would have to be 2 separate fees, and we don't wanna get another gateway. So we would have to build that into how much we charge for water. And it was
And
a
it
3%.
depends on what card they use, too.
Yeah, and we don't allow American Express, everything
Well,
else is
there's
3%.
still the
So
gold
you'd
card.
say you'd add,
Yeah,
there's-
so we allowed MasterCard, Visa, and Discover, that's
so
the 3.
Judy, you would add that to the cost of
We
the
would just try to-
transaction?
Yeah, you'd have to add that to the cost of the water.
Oh, to the water?
Yeah, we'd just have a slightly different tier that,
Yeah.
that captured that on average. But we'd have a monthly fee?
No,
No monthly
No.
fee?
no, when I talked to him, if we're adding it as a remote site.
Okay.
And so they wouldn't charge us a fee. We aren't charged monthly fees for our merchant accounts right now, so he said he would match that.
What were those 3 accounts again, Judy, you said?
We have a utility account, and we have a great rate on that because and you can only pay for utilities with that merchant
Yeah.
account. And then we have non-billed, anything,
One time.
like pool, what used to be the
Oh.
pool, or visitor
Like
center
one time.
events, yeah.
Okay,
And then we have the court,
the court.
So what Judy's saying is she will take one for the team and do extra work to avoid us having to pay $4,500.
I would much rather do that. I'm stingy, I think that's a lot of money.
And so there wouldn't be, the transaction fee would be passed along to the customer?
Yes.
But there wouldn't be a monthly fee or a setup fee?
No,
Okay.
Just a different tier in the charge on the water.
yes.
Yeah.
And then what is the timeline for that being online?
2 to 3 business days after we sign, Dan would have to sign an agreement with them. And then, he said it'd be 2 to 3 days before it's operational on Chase's side. I don't know how Aquaflow, but he said within a week.
And I asked Kelly, and he said, equipment-wise, we're good to go.
Judy,
So we-
one question with this, in the check register, we paid $1,559 to upgrade credit card reader for the water.
Right,
So that was paid out of the ARPA
yes,
funds,
Mhm.
okay.
yes.
And that was one time.
That's one time. That was to go from where we had codes in the office
Mhm.
to they could just get the credit card and swipe it.
Okay.
That's nice.
But, no, I think that your credit card's gonna be the only way, 'cause
I
you
think you're
can't
right.
get it.
Yeah.
And when you send somebody, they're just gonna have to use your,
It's too bad that you can't do it as a, I don't know, because I'm just thinking a construction guy needs water or something, or
Yeah.
a farmer. You just do that and it automatically goes to a bill and then you get a monthly bill or something, I don't know.
you mean the person
Add it
that's
to your-
getting the
Oh.
water gets the bill?
And that's how it was set up prior
That's what
to
it was.
them putting in the credit card swipe.
So the individual getting the water would get a once-a-month
Yeah,
bill?
so you've
Yeah.
got 20
Yeah.
transactions, but
Right.
one bill instead of
Yeah,
every
That
time.
would be,
But then when they talked about, I don't know, I think it was Kelly, and I'm not sure who, when they talked about that, you also will have, 2 or 3 months where nobody's paying, but they can still get water.
And to be shut, yeah, you're
Oh, you're-
losing this much water for 3 months
Just like
until they can
utilities,
shut
you're
up, yeah.
behind a month, yeah.
so every time it's paid for when it,
Then it's paid
It's
for
paid upfront,
at that
Time.
time, which is
Use.
nicer.
Yeah.
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 No
We're not
lag.
losing.
Well, that's
No
one
lag.
of the problems we've got with the fire hydrant,
Rentals.
Yeah.
rentals.
Is it?
Yeah.
That
You
way?
know,
Oh, yeah, that's the way it is
This-
now, and we have
Okay,
some
okay.
that just,
that, I mean,
That answers my
they
question.
pump
Yeah.
that stuff out of there and then
Mhm.
never see them again.
never see them
I
again.
think this'll,
I think this
Okay.
will be
this'll
good.
be good.
Good.
Yeah.
And I know it's not action, but is he okay to sign that agreement then?
I don't
Well, it's non-budgetary if we don't do the $4,500 option,
Yeah.
so it's not like we need a
Administrative.
budget amendment.
Administrative?
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
I think we've
Thanks.
chosen to
Thanks,
do it.
Judy.
Good news.
Yeah, thank you, Judy.
So this thing's gonna be operable pretty quick.
Well, you guys kept asking, and
Yeah,
I'm
you
like,
stop
we're gonna
asking
make a
that
decision.
question.
So, question, just out of
Quit
my own
asking.
stupidity, can somebody like me just go down there and fill my,
If you got a credit
Your
card,
pocket,
I mean,
Yeah.
if I wanna,
fill your pockets with water?
Sure.
Do you just put in there how much water you want, or
Mhm.
what?
yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I think there
Or
is
you
a,
slide and pump and then it just charges you what you pump?
Like a gas
Yeah.
pump?
Like a gas?
your fill, your.
We're gonna have a field trip.
Do you know the answer to that,
Look.
Judy? Does it,
Maybe we'll have a field trip on our retreat day, and we'll go down
you
and
say how
have
many
water.
gallons you want and that's how many it pumps, or does it charge you like a gas pump where you fill and then it charges you according to what you pump?
we'll find out.
Okay.
I
Field
did-
trip.
I'll tell you this, I did take our truck and made sure that
You
you
could make the turn?
turn. And I was driving, so I know you can make that turn.
Well, that's good.
My
And
boys.
nothing got dented either, did it?
No.
Okay.
Question isn't whether you can make the turn, the question is whether the hired man can make the turn.
That's why the boys put me in there. I am the hired man, so.
All right, so moving along to item number 17, breakwater storm drain bridge update.
So I'm gonna talk quick. I wanna get to number 18. We have our county commissioner here to talk about that. But I'm glad she's here for this discussion because it does involve the county. We've had people wondering where we're at with the bridge. We've been speaking internally. We're worried about the snow load on the mountain. There's a certain period of time in the spring, depending on how warm it gets, how fast that all that water can come off. The city has been looking at options of things that we can do with the breakwater to better remove, debris from the stormwater and potentially have it as a recharge site, to recharge the aquifer. We've been talking with the county engineer. It's a city and a county problem, as floods go on out on the flood channel all the way out to Little Salt Lake. The county has to maintain that, and the more debris and sediment there is in there, the more that they have to deal with as well. So, we have floodwater that comes off the county and into the city, and then it leaves the city and goes back out to the county. So it's a problem that we're looking to solve. We're hoping to kill multiple birds, not that we're killing birds, metaphorically speaking, kill multiple birds with,
Not ducks.
with one project. And the nexus that this ties into the bridge discussion is this. We have been assigned an engineer. UDOT has assigned an engineer to manage the bridge project from start to finish. His name is Rustin Anderson with Wall Consulting. And the bridge was estimated to be over a storm drain channel, right, the Parowan Creek, at a 100-year flood event. So many cubic feet per second of water going underneath the new bridge. And that's based on the current conditions of the channel. And the bridge is very expensive because it's got to be really tall and really long in order to get over not the channel that's there, but the channel that should be there to handle a 100-year event. So, the question is, if we actually redesign the breakwater and make it more functional, and what we're actively exploring is creating a debris basin or possibly a couple of debris basins to take out the rocks and the settlement and the trees, and then taking what is the bulk of the rest of that structure that's there, and instead of having it just flow out like it does, and there is a small concrete barrier there with a notch cut in it, right? And by the way, sediment is clear up to that. That needs to be cleaned one way or the other. But actually to make that a dam with an overflow, so that you clean the water with the debris basins, and then the rest of the water would then be recharged for the majority of the year. Only time it would come out would be in a major event where it actually topped that and came out an overflow, and then it would come down through. But at that point, you have a 37 acre foot retention basin that has taken the head off of the majority of the flood, so its outflow is going to be much less than what we're exposed to now. That has many benefits down the line, including the possible sizing of the bridge, including the potential flood damage that could happen to, and you look at where the subdivisions are going. We're growing out to the south and to the west, and potentially into the north and the east is where we've identified where the city will probably grow next. That's where the vacant land is. So we're going to have subdivisions being built up to this flood channel. It's going to be a bigger and bigger issue. Of course, we have the burn scar. We're dealing with different monsoon rain patterns than we've historically dealt with. So this is all interconnected, and the mayor will remind me if I forget that FEMA is looking to restudy our area. We don't have very good maps. They haven't been redone for a long time, and so and the county has been studying this drainage through a grant with NRCS and has spent a lot of time and money. That grant process and that study has hit a roadblock because essentially the outflow that goes under I-15, they've determined that to be undersized, and the scope of NRCS's engineering portion of their grant did not consider the other side of the freeway. So now they're deciding whether to expand it to the other side of the freeway. That doesn't necessarily affect this conversation, but where I'm going with this is this. If we can engineer this thing at the breakwater, working with the county, we have a grant that was provided by the county with some ARPA dollars, which we're going to use for storm drain. We have to match that. And finally, the Parowan Pumpers Association got a $250,000 grant for a recharge project. Originally, they were gonna do pipe along 600 west to take it out to the sewer ponds. That project is pretty much dead, for multiple reasons, but one of them being there's probably better recharge areas, and in talking with Tom Marston and others, the best place to recharge water in this valley is at the breakwater at the top of the alluvial fan, where the gravel is the best and all of that. So if we can get the pumpers to get that grant altered, so instead of buying pipe, they can put it towards cement and concrete structures. We can work with the county engineer. Hopefully we could get in there, and they would assist us with the dirt work between the city's money, which is grant money from the city and from the county, with this other grant money. We could potentially have as much as $500,000 if we were to get the county engineer to engineer it with assistance from another engineer. I mean, with a project like that, if we were to do a federal project, we'd spend $500,000 in engineering alone. We know the structure's basically already there. We're back to the pioneer days. They've known how to deal with this flood water. That's why the breakwater is there. So we're just talking about using the existing structure, improving it, turning it into a recharge basin with an overflow. One of the issues that would have to be figured out is the canal company's water rights, which are pulled out where they're taken out about 300 east and 200 west. Okay. We would have to make sure we protected their water rights so that they got all of their water. The brilliance of it is there's already a diversion up at the top of the breakwater. It would have to be improved to make sure that they got all of their water out before this structure, and there's already a channel that takes it around the breakwater right now. So what we would do is we would make sure that that structure was improved to the point where they got all of their water, it diverted around this structure, put it back into the channel where it could be taken out at their facility. The pumpers have filed for water rights and received them. I believe it's 20 acre feet per year or something like that, for recharge of every drop that passes the channel, the canal companies. That's why we've been looking for recharge west of where they currently are. But if we can take their water out at the head of this thing, recharge every drop that goes past it, plus fix our storm drain problem, plus we now don't have to have such a long and tall bridge, this can be like, we're not killing two ducks with one. We're actually could be solving many things all at the same time. Not to mention, you probably fixed the undersized culvert issue at I-15. And the county now doesn't have to clean as much sediment out of the lines all the way out. So it's kind of a win for the city, it's a win for the pumpers, it's a win for recharge, it's a win for the county. One piece of this puzzle that would still have to be figured out is we would need to find a contractor that we could lease the way it used to be done, like with Bob Evans, he had the lease. Because you have to now do something with all that material that's there. The city really doesn't need it. It's not like we can take it and throw it in our chip seal. I mean, we need a very specific size of chip in order to fit our standards and all that stuff. This is going to have a lot of stuff in it that have to put in equipment so that they could process it. We would need to find a partner to work with so that they could get that material even for free. It would be very disadvantageous for the city to keep it, because A, we don't need it, and B, you have to haul it somewhere, and that's where it gets expensive. Plus the labor hours of maintaining it. So if we could get a partnership with a company, and by the way, this is what also I know that Rich and the county engineers are trying to figure out how to do in the Cedar Valley. Let's be thankful we don't have Coal Creek to deal with, because that water and that watershed is just, it's the worst. We have pretty clean water that comes out of this canyon most of the year, and we could probably directly recharge most of it, and hardly any sediment. It's those flood events you got to take the stuff out. So, anyways, my update is this: we're looking at some options. I'm getting indications from Rich that if we can come up with a good design that can be engineered, that he may have time and resources available this spring, that maybe we could even start work on this. I am concerned at the status of our current flood channel before we potentially get stuff this spring and, you know, and of course the monsoons in the fall. So this is something I'm spending a lot of time on. I don't wanna derail or stop the bridge construction. I have been talking with Rustin, the engineer on the bridge, and he's like, I get it. This makes a lot of sense to look at this. And I asked him directly, what CFS do we have to design this bridge to? Is it have to be designed to whatever the last FEMA report estimate was, or will they take new standards based on this infrastructure that we're talking about building? And he says, I don't know. I will have to talk to the UDOT structures guy and see what they'll let us design to. So we're still going to move forward with the bridge. We have the federal aid agreement, which will be received. He said he'd send it out in the next couple of days. It takes about 2 weeks or so to get all the different signatures. That federal aid agreement is what allows us to start utilizing the joint highways money on this bridge. Of course,
is there a time frame that has to be used by?
There is, and we're not under a real strict time. I mean, it's not like it has to be spent this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if we did this...
We have a couple of years, but the only reason we wouldn't want to sign the FAA federal aid agreement is if there was a chance we weren't going to do the project at all. If that was the case and we started spending money and then we don't do the project, we have to pay it all back, everything we've spent. I think we know we need a new bridge, one way or the other, and we may as well start working on that. And really what we're talking about with this is the design phase of the bridge, deciding how much we want to design it at. To what level it has to be designed for. So, but it is all interrelated. And we've had some, citizens asking about where we're at with the bridge, and I'm just thinking, I'd rather build the right bridge than hurry and build too large of a bridge. Even if it is being paid for with federal money, A, we don't want to waste any money. B, if it's really long and really tall, that's just a pain. We don't want that anyways, right? Because the longer and taller it is, the more that you're going to have to ramp up to it. And by the way, this bridge this grant does not pay for our intersections on either side of the bridge. We have to do that. It doesn't pay for the width, the widening of 100 West. We're going to have to cover that. So it does not currently pay for the removal of the old bridge. And I've asked him, is there any way that we can get that covered? And he says, for one, only if you have money left over. If this bridge is really expensive, you may use every last dollar to build it. The problem is this: if you build the new bridge to a certain flood standard, and then you leave basically a bottleneck of an old bridge right in front of it, he goes, that may be how you get to the nexus to be able to remove the old bridge with this money, is if you leave the old bridge, it's just going to threaten the new one. And he said, so you may be able to do that. That's assuming you have leftover money. Well, if it doesn't have to be quite so tall and quite so long, we should be able to have extra money, and we could probably take out the old bridge. So
Dan,
that's my update, yeah.
I got a question for you, and this is coming from our old mayor.
Yeah.
Do we still have the grant that he got for the bridge of 1.3 or 1.4 million? Or is that not around anymore since it's been so long?
It was modified to the current grant that we have.
Okay.
And it's like $4.5 million. And I need to define that because the last thing that I saw showed some local money, I believe, through the I can't remember. And CIB, and I was like, wait a minute, what is this CIB piece? And in talking with Dave Demas in our RTEC meeting, he said, yeah, I wondered what that was too. So I think what we have to deal with is, and don't quote me on this because I'm going off my memory, which is notoriously bad. I think what we have is a $4.5 million joint highways grant, which we have to participate at a certain rate, which we have that money set aside, but that original grant was morphed into what we have now, so it wasn't lost. That I know of.
I wanna go back to the, breakwater. I mean, the bridge is something that we've got to, work on in a project, in a planned future project or integrated, however it can be, but this water is coming this spring unless we have very moderate conditions, and there's a high water content in that snowpack.
Yeah, it's scary.
That snowpack is the highest it's been at this time of the year.
And it's good to talk about.
Yes, it is.
So good to
But
talk.
I'm saying we gotta be proactive, we gotta get up to that breakwater, there is the need to do flood control regardless. We have to do that, and it's gonna be beneficial to everything else that Dan said, but we've got to do that at whatever cooperative agreements we come up with, however we can arrange to get that done, we have to do it. We don't have a choice. That's something that that's priority, first priority, and then the other will follow.
At a bare minimum, we need to do some maintenance on the breakwater.
Yeah.
Before, even if this project we're talking about doing with the county, if for some reason we couldn't get to it before the spring, we need to go in there, and do some maintenance on that breakwater so that it can at least function the way it's currently designed. Cause it, right now, is not gonna function the way it's currently designed.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. We've got work that has to be done now, regardless. And then hopefully everything else will come together.
So where we go from here, we're gonna, I was gonna put together a meeting, invite the Parowan pumpers, and talk about, invite the canal companies and have the county engineer there and kind of talk through this idea of how it could all flow and how it could all work. Love to have, some city council that works in this area there, but just like to have a brainstorm meeting, ASAP, and then I'll talk with Kelly about what we can do in the meantime, to work on that. And again, Rich did tell me, he said, Dan, let's move on this. I've got some time this spring with Curtis, our operator. We may be able to get Paul Cousins out here with a dozer and maybe do some work. I don't know. You don't have to pay Paul for that. He
just likes to do it.
He'll bring his grandson on his knee, and he loves the dozer time, but I don't know. We just need to do something. I wanted to bring everybody up to speed on the conversation, how it affected, the bridge and everything. And real quick, and I promise it will be really quick, we're gonna talk about this, I know in the mayor's update at the end on reports, but when we talk about storm drain on this part of town, we don't have it in our master plan for 200 South, and as we're talking about development down on the end of 200 South or Holyoke Lane, we've got to figure out also how to utilize this storm drain system to take the city storm drain off of the streets as this develops. And if we have a good system up here that takes most of the flood water, it makes it more available for us to be able to utilize, to have outlets that drop into this canal for our storm drain plan as we develop. And I don't want to steal the mayor's thunder any more than that, but it all ties together.
It does, but I can't emphasize, we've got to start on this now.
Yep.
On that breakwater and that flood control. 'Cause that water content is phenomenal.
Have you been up there? Have you driven up to Bryan Head?
And the reports,
Yeah.
the water content, like Matt says, this is great. This is what we prayed for. But we've gotta be smart and we gotta take care of it.
So should we stop praying now?
No.
No, I mean, we need it, but we
Never
just need
stop praying.
I haven't ever started.
we just need to know how to manage it, because it does give me anxiety when I went up there. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, where's all this water gonna go?
Yeah,
Like, there's nowhere for it to go.
They have nowhere to put the snow anymore either.
no.
No, they don't, which is fantastic. I mean, it's great.
And we're the end of January, so if it continues, maybe we better, invest in some boats, I don't know.
Leland's got a couple out there on the side of the house, Dave.
All right, we're gonna move to item number 18. This is the MOU with the county on retention facility. And I
Hey.
know you haven't heard Dan enough.
Yeah, you haven't heard me enough, and maybe our illustrious commissioner can come up. So this is not action item, this is a work item, and we'll wanna have definitely our attorney look at the MOU. I did, talk about this last, time. Everybody thought we were digging the new swimming pool out there off of 200 North, and that's not the case, but I also said that we would have an MOU, to consider soon, and we did get a draft copy of an MOU, and if I can summarize kind of the idea of this is that, county obligations, well, first of all, the site, we do know where the site is, right, just north of the soccer fields and the baseball fields, that triangular piece. The scope, the water retention facility will cover no more than 2 acres and be used for water containment. The structure will begin no closer than 100 feet from 200 North and no closer than 15 feet from any property line. That's the scope. County obligations, county will at its own cost be responsible for the construction of the facility. Once completed, the county will share responsibility for the removal of sedimentary buildup in the facility with the assistance of the city, as described below. City obligations. The city will, once the retention facility is completed, assume responsibility for the management of vegetation. I talked about brush hogging that. And at its own cost, mitigate the growth of vegetation that may otherwise interfere with the function of the facility. So basically, we have to just keep the weeds down, any willows or something like that that were to grow. The city agrees to assist the county in hauling away sedimentary debris or materials with the use of city trucks or equipment. So in the event that we started to get a bunch of silt or sedimentary buildup and we decided to do a project, the county would probably bring their track hoe and loader over and we'd use the city trucks to haul away. That's kind of just the concept of what that really talks about. Future needs related to the facility. In the event that the water retention facility may need additional development or construction for the use of an outflow or overflow, that's gonna be the city to figure out what to do with it, to tie it into our storm drain, which we're having master planned for the east side of the city there. And both the county engineer and, myself, with all of my engineering, whatever, this is basically sitting on top of a potential gravel pit, as we've scraped off as the county has scraped off the top layer of topsoil. It's just like a perfect gravel pit. We really don't expect a whole lot of water to make it into this facility, and when it's there, we don't expect it to last very long at all. There's been talk about, what if we have mosquitoes, what if we have issues like that. I think that would only be a problem really is if we allow sediment to build up to the point where the water stops percolating. Because as it is, I think it'll percolate overnight. That's the county engineer's feeling, that's my feeling, but anyways, Marilyn, do you have anything you want to say or add, or is there questions from the council, or?
Well, I've got a few. I've talked to Rich Wilson, and I do because this is by my house, and I've been engaged in this because of where my property, my house is. And we went out there with Marilyn and Paul and Rich, on the onset, and we've tried to look at the different channels that can be diverted and taken through, and he chose this one west of the soccer fields, and I can't remember, Marilyn, help me, why we couldn't go down between the ball fields.
She's usually telling people to come up to the mic.
I know, Marilyn would. I always tell people to state their name. So, did Richard send you that email, or did you not see it? I thought maybe you'd want to bring that up so that he had pictures and...
Hang on.
Okay.
What he...
Anyway, That's loud. Yeah, when we talked about going either across the ball field, the soccer field, or down through the middle by the bathrooms,
Yeah.
it would cause a lot of damage as far as having to tear up all of your infrastructure that's already there, the cement, the asphalt and that type of thing. Richard had some, pictures of it, and
I do have that on email. I could hurry and run and email it to Judy, to Callie.
so
Sorry,
so the one that he had was across the soccer field, which would tear up your soccer field,
Right.
and you'd have to redo it. But the biggest problem is he feels like it's got to be a large pipe. What does that say, Dan? 4 foot?
But what about in between the, the
4 foot
field
culvert.
in that
Yeah.
vacant area?
But then you get down to past the restroom,
Right,
and
you're
you've
on the
got all of
parking
the
lot.
parking lot, and
Unless
your
you just
curb and gutter,
let
and,
it float and use the curb. But
yeah.
the thing I've
I
had,
know that you're concerned about your house on that corner there, I can
Yeah.
understand that, but to do it anywhere else, the cost of it is gonna be huge because of the pipe, because that pipe is $150-something
$156 a foot. I'm looking
is
at
the
what he.
county taking in consideration the access to that soccer field? 'Cause they access that from the west. There's 4 gates there, and the public uses that as a main access point more than the parking
other
lot
side.
on the
Yeah, the
east.
ditch will go down there.
And Richard told me they're gonna they want gravel, they want it cobbled or whatever. Well, people have got to cross,
Yeah.
and then they've got, they're gonna park there. And Richard says, well, we'll restrict that, we'll put boulders there. Well, you're talking city property, and nobody's communicating with the city about any of these procedures.
Well, yeah, and I haven't gotten into a lot of those conversations either. Richard has pretty well. But when we talked about it before, the cost and tearing up your soccer field and that was the issues on those other sides.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we could put, a culvert there that they could walk over and into that gate.
Mm-hmm. There's
I mean,
4 gates.
There's 4 gates.
4 gates. 2 of them, there's one double one that they take their equipment through. There's a couple of individual man gates up north, but then there's one on the south where it's hard to get access because they've made quite a berm there, and I think they're trying to divert that water on top of the berm, not to let it go down onto the soccer field. But that makes that gate really inaccessible, on that south.
So on the south side, is it in the middle?
On the south.
On the south?
No, I'm talking about on the
Or
west. This is
Oh,
right on the
on-
corner, on the west side.
on
There's
the
4
west
gates
side.
on the south side.
Okay.
There's 4.
On the
Yeah,
west
on
side.
the west side
I'm
is the-
sorry, on the west.
The west side is what I was talking about.
Yeah, the west.
Maybe we could put a culvert there to where they could walk over the ditch.
And, yeah, 'cause you're gonna have, the people are gonna try
They-
to park.
They will park over there in your
Mm.
parking lot. That was another thing that I wondered if maybe the county could maybe come in there and spruce that up a little bit, 'cause we could have used that extra parking also until
Mhm.
you decide what you're doing with your,
Yeah.
swimming pool. But,
Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to
I'll-
correlate, I'm not saying it
I'll-
can't work,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I see these, I get people come and say, well, how are we gonna get in there? That's the
Yeah.
way we've been using to get in.
I'll talk to Richard about that and see what we can come up with that.
Well, sure, I'm concerned about it being deflected from my house.
I know.
But,
And he's going to put Jersey barriers.
yeah, I
He
talked
told
to
you that.
Richard, and,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
last summer, we had that event, and it flowed perfectly,
I
without
know. I know.
any help.
Well,
So,
when we originally took over the fairground, I had no idea that we were taking all that water from that whole subdivision.
Yeah, that Gurr subdivision, it used to go down Third East.
Yeah, and it all comes in there, and
Yeah.
in fact, during a rain event, Matt and I was there, and I said, let's go around there and see how much water. Oh, my
It
goodness.
boils out of that
amazing.
storm drain.
Oh, my
Yeah.
word.
Mhm.
A lot of water. So it flows across the parking lot just fine,
Mhm.
and then it puddled down in the corner of where the horse trailers park.
Mhm.
But then we can take it across. They dug it across,
Right.
and then it flowed out of there.
Yeah,
really
'cause it
quite
was
good.
going on that soccer field on the southwest, but then
A little bit.
they put a berm
Mhm.
and got that diverted so it should
That fixed
flow
that.
down, and if he puts that cement turn in there,
Well, and another idea that we could consider is, I mean, right now we have we could call this a temporary solution. We get our, storm drain master plan for that part of the city done, and maybe we engineer it with a pipe so that it goes into a, a structure there at the bottom of the county stuff, and then goes through a pipe down all the way with some inlet.
And that's the, that's
Rather than
the
an open-
problem, that
open canal.
It's the cost of that
Yeah.
pipe.
Oh, yeah.
Because, Richard said, I just don't dare put anything less than that.
No, I'm saying we put on our plans a pipe, and then in the future, when we
You pipe
we
that
have
sometime.
development, or
Yeah.
we can get a grant or something, and we
Yeah.
throw it in a pipe. But you need to have a solution to get the people across to the park and not
But
have it
that
dangerous.
would definitely be the best if you could eventually pipe it. But at this point, it's still gonna cost us, I think he said it was 30,000 for the box that and then the pipe going across, which was 50 feet of that, 150.
well, I'm sure they'll have to
pipe.
go out and dress that up a little, 'cause they cut pretty good ditch
Yeah.
to get it, and so it'll have to,
It'll
all
be dressed up,
yeah, and worked.
And I'll talk to Richard about, on that west side, if we
Mhm.
can put a culvert there of some kind, maybe even just one from the road department. It wouldn't have to be a cement one, because it's just people walking on it, not,
Yeah. He's
Maybe one
gonna,
of those corrugated aluminum ones or something.
Yeah, we have those at the road department, and,
Maybe we get a couple of them, put them in just for pedestrian crossing or something.
yeah.
A wider one where we cross equipment or something.
Mhm.
one other thing in this MOU, Commissioner,
Okay.
it states that in the event that this doesn't, which we don't foresee it being big enough or whatever, that the city's, is, responsible to go and mitigate with the property owners if there need to be expansion or whatever. I think the county should help and participate with that.
I'm not sure what I understand
Well,
that.
If it were to be overflowing from what we're building now, and it becomes a problem for wherever's downhill from that, this just says the
Yeah.
city will figure that out, basically, I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And he's saying
Well,
maybe the county could help
We've
figure it out
always
as well.
helped.
'cause it comes off, I know it's come off that subdivision, but
Yeah.
then it also is the fairgrounds. that-
Yeah,
So it,
which if we ever blacktop that,
yeah.
which I don't know that we'll ever do
Yeah.
that, anyway,
then-
not in my time, but, but yeah, it could flow more.
Well, I'm just saying that the county probably should help,
Yeah.
share
Yeah.
the responsibility. If that, and then, another, Richard, I've had a lot of discussion over this, and he come and asked me, he said, have you seen water up around your, and I says, well, I think this is a pretty good alluvial plain, pretty good creek bed, and it
Yeah.
percolates, and he says, well, this is one thing that they don't think it'll happen, but they says, when you divert water and you pool it like that, you can cause it so it leaves its original channel, whatever, and it kicks it back to another property, or it shows up or something,
Somewhere else.
and I talked to him, and they says, well, if something like that happens, then they would, the county would be responsible.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Are they responsible enough, Justin, without making them responsible?
Legally or
Yeah.
morally?
Well, both.
Not legally, but morally.
We've always been morally,
They have,
Okay.
but yeah.
even with the fight last week.
Whew, that was a dandy.
But, no, I mean, that's just something that, I was surprised when he brought that up, that's been not common,
Yeah.
but it is something that, when you disrupt the natural,
Mhm.
flow of something, so, anyway.
You're lucky you built your home so high. because I don't know that that water could ever get to your home, 'cause it is very high.
Well, that was the plan, 'cause we knew we were in a flood channel without all of this, so.
Yeah, so that was wise.
And that's why we were glad to get that, fill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Good?
Right, and this is another, I mean, it's been in the works for quite some time. I think it was Cleve, Kelly County, and now we're winter where we're able to start working on some of these things that were planned. And, moving the dirt.
I blindsided the rest of the council on it.
That's
You
where I
missed
was
that.
going is, how come none of us have known about this? That's where I'm kinda...
Well, one reason you don't live right there by it and worried about that coming down. I
Your
went and
house.
initiated my
Yes.
contact.
It's no excuse still.
But shouldn't the rest of the council know about it? That's where I'm kinda getting at. We've been on here the same amount of time.
Well, my concern when I've approached them, that's why I kinda recused myself or took a conflict of interest, is because I went because of my own personal interest of my house and went and found out what was going on, and was kind of involved where it was regarding my house, is what it was. It really wasn't regarding the building of that retention pond or anything else. It was the targeting of the direction versus, another direction or anything else. It was strictly to deal with the impact on me personally.
And as a county, we didn't even know we had to take care of all of that water. We had no idea that it was, and then when we saw it and we realized it was coming across there, we brought the engineer, we brought Richard over and said, we've gotta do something.
So this all
So that's
started,
when we started
this started at the
talking.
time that the county was taking over the fairgrounds. So it was Cleve, you, Paul, and the county engineer that
Kelly
walked it,
was
came up
there.
with the plan. You know what they say about assuming? Really, I assumed that the council knew about it, and I knew that Dave knew about it, but it was a project that had been going on, so I had assumed that everybody knew, and that was what happens when you assume, so.
Well, what brought it to
I
a
was in meetings when we did the transition, but it never was brought up.
Well, we didn't know
Well, they
until
didn't
after
know.
the,
And I didn't, I'm
until it
in
was.
the same boat. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
everybody seems like they've known about it, but yet all of a sudden, boom.
Well, what initiated this was when we had that cloud burst last, that monsoon.
Yeah.
And it dumped that. We never even knew because it always went down Third East. And then all of a sudden, here comes this river right for my house. And then we're watching to see if it's going to make the turn. And until we didn't know.
Yeah.
We had no clue. We never dealt with it. It always went down. Haven't you seen it go down Third East?
Yeah.
So how did it
Okay.
divert, well, I'm trying to figure
That's
out what
where we
changed
thought
from
it
Gurr
would go.
subdivision. Was something taken out or altered so that Gurr subdivision came across
Yeah,
the
and I
fairgrounds
don't know,
versus out to
because-
300 East?
Because it's always come across there some, but
Yeah.
part of it was that we fixed that all up, the parking lot, so it really flowed. I mean, it flowed beautifully. We were there when it
Mhm.
rained
So it was
hard.
really the modification of the parking lot that changed it going straight south versus going out to 300 and then, north,
Because I think it.
rather than
came
going
across,
west and then down to north.
It used to come out right there
Yeah.
At
through
the entrance?
gate and then down 300 East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right at the fair
It'd come
gate
out of Gurr
entrance.
subdivision, hit that road in front of the clinic,
Mhm.
and come out to the west, through the
Yeah.
gate, and
Yeah.
into the 300 East, and then,
it must be the parking lot,
Oh,
that beautiful parking lot.
it is,
that we
that's,
built.
'cause the racetrack was up higher, and it forced the water.
Well, I was there when it was raining cats and dogs. I happened to just drive out there, and the definition.
Looked like a lake.
It was the definition of sheet flow.
Yeah.
It was just a half an inch
All
deep
the way across.
uniformly,
I was so proud of
heading
my
that way.
roads department, I can't even tell you. I called them up immediately and said, you have no idea how beautiful this is.
Yeah.
Didn't look so beautiful from Dave's front porch.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've got pictures if you wanna see 'em, but it came right down that west side of the ball fields, the soccer fields. And it was, and we just, you know, we were worried that that berm wasn't enough on that street, but it turned.
It turned.
And without
That was
any.
a lot of water.
Without any, oh yeah. And Rich came over, 'cause I called Rich. And he came over and we looked at it and, yeah, we were impressed how it went around and it went right down to where, if that happened again, it will go into that retention pond.
I mean, we were in different cars, so all I know is I was in the back seat with Kelly. He wasn't surprised by any of it. And when we looked at this plan, he was like, that's what we need to do. And
Yeah.
so I didn't know that.
Yeah, the engineer
I
said
don't
this
know
is,
the
I mean, he took all of the grades and everything, and he said, this is the only place to take it is across here. I mean, when it all was said and done.
Well, it flowed because, you know, like we've talked about between the restrooms and the, and all that, there would have to be some, you know,
Yeah.
some engineering, some work there, but this,
It flows.
I will admit, it flowed fine,
It was beautiful, yeah.
yeah.
So,
So you know, and I'm the one that's gonna sustain the damage, if anything, and I'll be honest, after seeing that, I'm not concerned.
yeah.
'Cause I know Rich told me about what kind of a turn they're gonna put in there. You know, it's gonna be a cement turn, so, unless you have some phenomenal.
Well,
But-
we felt fine about doing this work, because, I mean, we didn't know that the subdivision was gonna put all that water that we would
Yeah.
have to take care of,
Right,
but we're fine with that. You know, I mean, we feel good about, you know, taking care of the water off to the fairgrounds, and that's additional water, but I think this is gonna work well.
yeah.
And
Oh, I really didn't realize where that source was until then. I went up, you know, and it was coming up out of that storm drain,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, just bubbling
Oh, yeah.
by that clinic.
Oh, yeah,
And, it was, yeah, and it used to go like we said, west, but it's, no, I think it'll
So it's
work fine.
gonna be good, I think. So,
Yep.
anything else?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh, you bet.
Thanks, Commissioner.
All right. Now, item number 19, which is the discussion on groundwater management plan. Comment to state engineer.
So this is, I just, there's a comment period open right now. It will probably be the last time to make a public comment on the proposed groundwater management plan by the state engineer. It's a 60-day window that opened right after the meeting in, January 9th.
So it's been going.
So the question is, A, do we want to make a comment on the plan? And the comment doesn't have to be, we support it, we're against it, or we're neutral. We can make a comment that talks about the nuance of the impact on the city, and we can use it as a statement. I didn't know, and I certainly didn't want to make a comment and speak for the city without discussing it with the governing body. Do we want to say something, as they have this open? I don't know if they're gonna listen to the comments. They wouldn't have a comment period without it. I just don't know how much impact it'll have. In kind of thinking what some stuff that we may comment, we may say. Again, not supporting or against it. And maybe the council wants to take a stand for or against it. But some things that I thought of that could be included in a comment is the fact that we do agree with the need to conserve water, which is our most precious natural resource. We need to protect the aquifer. Was one thought I thought was a good statement. We're motivated and engaged on multiple fronts to actively conserve the underground water and to increase recharge to the aquifer. I've been kind of disappointed that I haven't heard, the plan allows for voluntary arrangements, and I haven't heard of really any substantive making momentum voluntary arrangements from anybody but the city. And we're doing everything we can, and the city's only a portion of it. So I think it'd be good to say we invite everybody else in the basin that's pumping to do everything they can to voluntarily conserve and find active solutions. I think that's a good thing. I also wanted to indicate the impact of this on the city. The city will lose around 1,000 acre-feet of groundwater in the curtailments in this plan. That's 83% of our underground water rights. That's a major impact to the citizens of Parowan. I think the state needs to know that. I think that needs to be on the record. It may be the state's only tool to curtail, but they need to know how it impacts the city. I think that needs to be said. We appreciate that in the modified plan that they have adjusted the timeline a little bit, but I think the consensus from almost everybody that I've heard in the valley and at these meetings is we'd like a little more time. They have given us some time, but we'd like a little more time. Whether they will or not, I think I don't know. If any of these things you disagree with, by all means, tell me. I was spitballing. We understand the state engineer's primary tool to achieve safe yield in the aquifer is to curtail water rights that have been overextended, right? For this reason, we support and encourage the state legislature to consider additional modifications to state law to provide more creative solutions to solve our water problems, including maybe providing funding to purchase and retire younger shares, amongst other ideas. The state has one tool, and it's a gigantic hammer. There's a lot of ideas that I've heard out there. For one, the motivation is all wrong. Everybody wants to use as much water as they can to prove up on it. That is not something that encourages conservation. If they allowed people to conserve water and not be penalized, because it's use it or lose it is one of their policies. I think the state needs to look at their policies that actually encourages conservation and doesn't punish those that conserve. The city, I don't want to use the word bank, the city has a little bit more relaxed constraints of losing water if we don't use it immediately, but everybody else doesn't have that. And so the state's policies just basically, they go exactly opposite than what we're trying to do. So I think the state needs to consider giving the state engineer, the state legislature needs to consider giving the state engineer more tools, whether it's money to buy out younger shares, whether it's change the rules a little bit, give them some more, everything but just one big hammer. So I don't know, maybe you don't like that, but I thought that was a good idea.
I like it, Dan.
And what about mentioning something about secondary water?
Yeah, that's my next and last thing.
Okay.
We're encouraged that if the plan is adopted, it will exempt the city from the state's requirement to install individual meters on each and every pressurized irrigation customer within the city, because that simply doesn't work for Parowan City. However, in the event that this exemption were to be removed in the future by any future legislation, Parowan City will become considerably more disagreeable to the state's plan. My fear is that they've given this carrot that says, you should support this plan because it's going to exempt you from metering, and they're actively debating on the Hill how to enforce more secondary metering. I'd hate for them to have got us, to kind of play ball a little bit, and then they put the plan in, and then next year the state legislature changes the rules. So I think that we ought to state something. We do like that this exempts us, but we're not going to like it if you just take away that exemption next year or something. I don't know. These were just some things I spitballed.
No, I agree.
Yeah, it's gotta be
Especially
something.
with-
Dan, do you think, I just think that we need to be really specific about how the city has been conserving water. Go through the list and specifically tell them, future plans. I mean, we redid our water rates,
this ordinance, this water ordinance.
The water ordinance, exactly.
Yeah.
The fact that we're going after a recharge at the breakwater.
Yeah.
That we're working with the pumpers to
That one little
Recharge.
pond we're looking at.
we're looking at the dry canyon pond.
That won't do anything for recharge.
Well, no, but it will allow
Like
for.
we're not losing it,
We're not sending it down to
Okay.
down to the
Right.
Little Salt Lake.
Little Salt Lake and
You're using it to retain and, yeah.
And the meeting right before this public meeting, Dan did a PowerPoint presentation, and he bulleted all of those things to the state engineer. So I agree, we need to repeat it again in our statement.
Right,
So
redo
that
it
we're
again.
sure that
You know, that we've got specific examples of how the city is trying to meet the mandate of water conservation. We're not just talking about it, we're actually implementing
We're actually doing it.
policies and procedures that are trying to mitigate the problem of
We
the
know, we
depletion
need
of
to
the
show
groundwater.
we're
This
active.
retention pond we just were discussing.
Exactly.
So we're on, so if you go to the rights website, it has this plan there, and then it shows anyone that's already made a statement, and there's only one. So, again, we need to be sure ours is there. And then, so really just trying to figure out how to do it, and I agree completely with adding more information on what we've already done. But we need to run that through somehow, so the statement, when it does post, it's kind of our forever,
Yeah,
never go away.
yeah.
So when we do it, we need to be sure we all really like it.
Yep. So I can write something up. I mean, we have a good month before it needs to be submitted. I can write something up, send it out, send back any comments if, something I said was dumb or my grammar's horrible. I did go to Cedar High, so.
I know, I'm in the same boat, that's why I use Grammarly. I just plug it on in, and it's like,
But I thought that it would be dumb for the city to not make a comment, but knowing how important this is, I really wanted to run it by everybody and see kind of where we were at.
I just think it helps the city look more proactive too,
Yeah.
bonding.
And there's things that I think we need to consider. We may be forced to do, we may wanna come up with a conservation tier in our water plan that encourages people. If you can't make any existing resident get rid of lawn, for example, but you could provide a conservation tier that if they voluntarily were to get rid of a bunch of lawn and replace it with good looking landscaping, that we could give it and sign something that says I won't use more than so many gallons on average or something, then we could give them a little advantage. There's things that we can continue to do.
I think the state
Encourage it.
kinda does that, too.
Doesn't that tier thing in the
Well,
water rate?
We have to build it in. When we do have a tiered rate, but I'm saying, what I'm talking about is actually, it's an incentive for people that are developing.
Well, I think there was, the state, one of the meetings I've gone to, not this last year, but the year before I'm tired, so it's not UAMPS, what's the other one, the state?
What, water rights?
No, that we go on the conference, that we go.
Utah League of Cities and Councils.
They did have one on for conversation, I think the state already does conserving, like pulling your lawns out and putting in, xeriscaping, and they've got a lot of stuff out there too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of cities that are doing this, which is a good thing, and you're not gonna mandate anything to anybody, but you can provide some voluntary things that if they choose to do it, then they're gonna save even more or something. But just some more ideas that we're doing. I'd just like to see some, I'd like to see some other ideas come from everybody that's bigger players in the water market, but.
Okay,
Yep.
we'll see something from you, we can all add to it, and by the time it gets sent in, will it be in agreement with our statement?
It'll be awesome.
It'll be wonderful.
Okay. So the last item is, reports and updates. Should we start down there?
The only thing I had was, historical preservation meeting. I've been on historical preservation for over 20 years, and this is the first time I've ever had to have a meeting with a plan before planning and zoning had a chance to look at it. So it was interesting, and Dan bailed on me.
Dan.
I was at that power meeting with Jeremy. Left me hanging. Anyway, it's on 200 South, that fourplex that
proposed.
The proposed Dan told me to just have the meeting,
Where the
look at the aesthetics and just do the historical preservation and turn it back. So,
That's what you do.
the plan that he had, we talked to him about the color and the siding and the things that we were concerned about, and then put right on the form, pending approval by planning and zoning. So it was a weird one. But I did it, Dan. I want credit.
I wasn't in that meeting, but I did hear that my name was used as an endorsement of that, and I'm like, all I've ever said is this is a uphill thing to see if this even is possible.
Oh, you were like,
I have never given that impression. But you would rather that come after planning and zoning? That's news to me. I'd never been involved with one, so I didn't realize.
Yeah, usually, because the planning and zoning does all of the hard work, and then we just look at the aesthetics and whether it ties in with the historical preservation district. So it's usually after.
I think the only reason I may bring it to you first in the future is if it's some crazy idea that I know is probably going to be fine with planning and zoning, and I know you guys may have heartburn over, I may say, yeah, you may run it by these guys first.
Whatever you want to do, but
it's a 5-story Connex, industrial looking.
Yeah. When you come with the Connex plan to tear down the Old Rock Church and put up a Connex box, then we might have a problem.
Jim, doesn't that historical district go to 6 West?
Yes, yes. You remember when it went clear to the freeway and both...
Right, I had that discussion.
Yeah.
I thought, when did that change?
Oh, geez, David.
I think
I'm
Judy or
thinking...
Kelly looked it up
I
the last
found-
time we
I
had
found
that
it in
conversation.
Judy and
Oh,
I
you
think
found
it
it?
was like in the 90s.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
That
late
long
90s.
ago?
Yeah, it's been quite a while, but... And then the only other thing, I owe the city council and Parowan City an apology. I was only crossing guard for 2 days, and then I got canned.
What did you do?
Well, Addie and Jed said something about being a little badge heavy, you know.
I wish I was informed on the day that you did it.
The big red sign and
Michelle,
the vest.
there's pictures, there's evidence.
I wanna see him.
I need to see evidence.
Cars did he hit?
No, there was something about shaking down the little kids for their milk money that got me in trouble. And then Heather said I couldn't smoke.
Is that what my students were saying, that mean old man on the corner?
Exactly.
It was probably you. No, I'm just kidding. They know.
But seriously, we've got some good kids. I'm not kidding you.
We do.
3/4 of the kids that went through that crosswalk said thank you,
Yeah, they are good kids.
They're good.
you know.
They are.
Did
anyway.
you end up crossing the deer or not?
No, I never did see thunder.
Okay.
He didn't help you?
Jet crossed the deer,
Yeah.
and I saw he crossed Main Street later on as well.
Oh, he was playing down at the school, and all those kids, as I'm yelling at them, do not touch the deer.
Little lime.
And they're like
disease going.
trying to pet it, and I was like freaking out, and then I had Jed, and
But anyway, I did, get 2 days in.
you got
Before I
2 days,
got
and then
canned.
you got X? Like, they literally said you couldn't do it anymore.
No, actually, the guy came back.
Our normal guy is back.
Okay.
Thank goodness he's back from injury. He was, and I really want to give him a shout out, Sean. He, not only is he back, but he came back a little slightly ahead of the doctor's recommendation on his rehab. He really wanted to get back, and he was afraid that we were going to replace him permanently, and he loves that job, and he's like, so he got out there, and, I mean, let's be honest, it's not the most, you don't need to be quite an athlete in order to do it, but I was like, more power to him. A lot of people would have stayed home. You know how cold it was when you were there.
Yeah.
A lot of people would have used that as time
I
off.
felt sorry for those kids, 'cause he's seen who they had to deal with.
I love that they called you. Like, I love, and I wish somebody would have been like, hey, Rochelle, Jim's out there.
No, I tell you what, everybody needs to do that. That was good.
I don't have anything. Jeremy took my spoil, so.
Jeremy took mine too, I don't have anything.
I saw the library board needs new members.
Did you see that? It got posted that they need, members for the library board. I didn't know if we.
No, where is that at?
It was on Facebook. It said we need more new or more members for the library board. I didn't know if you had heard about that, but I was like,
I didn't
okay, how
see
many
it, no.
I haven't heard anything.
do we need to help them, you know, find people that would.
Is the library board an official board, or is it kind of a,
Yes.
No, I didn't know if that was.
I haven't heard a thing about that.
Yes,
What's about it?
they're
So,
by ordinance.
Okay.
Michelle?
Well, to that, the theater board is also redoing their stuff because they have a lot of members not coming, not participating. So they did hold a meeting last Tuesday that I was not able to attend because they just threw it out there randomly, and I already had 2 other things on that day. So I'll follow up with that too and see what they're doing with that. Not a whole lot. Oh, I want to give a shout out though to Parowan High School. For the first time, and I think in Parowan's history, now don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's never happened, but they won the 2A region in swimming.
Oh, yeah.
With 1 student from Parowan swimming as a freshman. And they won, and it was Sydney Lauer, so Wendy Lauer's daughter. Won, she took the 2A region, and they're going to state in 2 weeks, so we'll see where that goes. But I was like, that is super awesome. And she won it as a freshman, which was pretty cool. And she sent us some sent me some pictures, and I thought, well, thanks for sharing that. So, but that's all I've got.
Good.
Thank you.
Pine zoning, they met a week ago and they talked a lot about billboards, and then we've heard the other discussion here, so. We're just waiting for a response on the head gate at Meeks Pond, and, arranged with Pam Wing. If any of you went to the,
I know her.
ball, the Parowan ball, Jim was attending camp. You remember those they were sketched?
You should see those things.
Okay.
They are amazing. She did,
What did she do?
Of
she
the rock
painted
church and the Rambouillet barn.
Rambouillet barn, and they backlit it, and it's absolutely amazing.
Well,
Really?
we've arranged with her to donate those, and we're trying to find a place to put them. There's one suggestion in the we got theater up on
in the
those.
theater?
Yeah, Jet Smith's looking at that. So, if anybody has ideas,
It would take
They're like,
there's,
they're every bit as big as that quilt.
I've got the dimension, I think there's like 8 feet
And she painted
by
them.
6.6.
a landscape
Yeah,
format.
and they're on what's that material they call it?
Muslin or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I didn't know
yeah.
she painted. I knew she.
And she's got them on a wood frame, but I know Jet Smith and Corey have offered to maybe frame them and do something. They were gonna look at the library, they look visitor center, so
They
anywhere,
were gonna use it, or they were gonna keep them there on the stage at the,
the Third Ward.
yeah, that's,
But she says that she'd like to donate them and have them displayed if we wanna,
oh man, I tell you what, they
Yeah.
were amazing.
yeah. So she's given those to the city officially, she told me
Wow,
that.
that was really nice of her.
So anyway, so if you think of a place that you want those.
My
a
house.
direct- Yeah, yeah. And so, anyway, and then we've talked about the crosswalks. I'm just concerned if we're gonna get the signs.
I think they've been ordered.
I haven't seen those. And then, there's been a request to have, you've seen the signs at the Meeks Pond. There's a request that we get another one that says no motorized vehicles or something, so, I don't know. And speaking of that,
You're giving me money? You
I
did not.
got the course completed for the ATV, thanks to
That's
the
not your name.
encouragement of Officer Adams.
Chief Adams.
Chief Adams, so I encourage anybody else to do it. It's easy, do it. Okay. Yeah, that's my driver's license. Do you want, see, I had a mustache. Yeah.
Remind me to tell you something after.
Okay. I think that's all I have, thank you.
What is everybody's opinion about adding yet another sign to the Meeks Pond area that says no ATVs or no motorized vehicles? I'm afraid we get too many signs and now you lost the natural beauty of it, but I guess we could put something on the same pole underneath the others that says.
That's the only thing I thought, if you just did it small and on the same pole, 'cause you do not wanna have a, but what do you think, Jim? No, motorized, 'cause until you get that seeded or do whatever reclamation you're gonna do, that dirt's gonna invite.
Well, that's why we had those trails and all of that native planting on there.
Yeah.
Eventually, when we do what we're going to do, we won't have the problem, but in the meantime, it's an attractive nuisance, is it called?
I would say just a little sign, not like an extra pole or
No,
anything, just
maybe
put it
a
on the
little one
same
on
sign.
the same pole below
would be
the
fine
other,
with that.
something.
Okay. Be something that says it's not allowed, and then we can kind of enforce that. We could anyways. That's the thing. I mean, if somebody's out there doing donuts, we can call dispatch and cops can get down there and say, you can't do donuts on city property, get out of here.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Hey.
then, well, in those intersections, you've reached out.
Yep, that's on my update.
Okay.
So first thing, we have Keith, asked if he could apply, the state of Utah made available a Joint Performance Evaluation Commission grant that would let us, basically apply for, some video conferencing equipment. 100%, they just buy it for us, so that we can do WebEx video. And I'm of the opinion that, if somebody wants video conference, that's fine, but if we wanna do court in person, I think that's a great idea, and we should do court in person as much as we can. But the reason I like this is we would actually do the video conferencing equipment in our conference room, where we would use it all the time for not just court stuff, but heck, I had a meeting there today, and we had engineers from Salt Lake and Orem and St. George, and me and Jeremy and Kelly was actually in St. George, and he was on the meeting, and so video conferencing is pretty kind of the way things are going. But this grant, it's not a lot.
So it was a video and not just audio.
Have you ever seen those owls? It's called an owl, and it sits there in the middle of the table with a camera that moves, and whoever starts talking in the room, the owl will look at them.
Distracting.
So it just tracks the conversation. I am gonna embarrass the mayor. She says, so what you don't wanna do is cough and then pick your nose, because the owl will look at you, and now you're on camera, and you may not think of it.
People do the weirdest stuff,
Did you
and you're
do
just
that?
like, no, but I see what people do, and if you make a noise, whether you say anything or not, it goes on to you.
You clear your throat, and the owl will look at you. So, but anyways, this would provide for that system for free, that would come from the courts, that they would put it in, and so I just was gonna let you guys know, I told them, yeah, let's apply for that, get that put
Does
in.
that help for anything in here?
No, it would just be in the conference room. We need to look at updating our stuff in here, but that's gonna be a little bit more complex.
Have tools in here, but that room doesn't have it.
Yeah. So, I love anything when you get grant money that you can use for multiple things. The worst thing is you buy something and never use it, or worse, you have to then now spend money to maintain it or something like that. But when we can take advantage of grant money that has multiple uses, that's a good thing. So, that's the JPEC grant. I was about to tell you, it's like $32,637. And so that would use, Mountain West to install it, and we'd get it from them, but. Storm drain study, I talked about that. I'm gonna let the mayor talk about that.
Not, you're building it up too much. So, we had been asking months ago, our council had approved pursuing if we could add on a storm drainage study. That would cover 300 and 200. Our plan would then be complete and considered updated. So we were looking at pursuing that and, wrote to UDOT in September.
Excuse me, real quick, just 300 east, is that what I hear? Okay,
Yeah,
So-
300 East area,
just wanna make sure.
basically,
Those are the two missing
Out
areas.
everything out there.
Mhm.
Sorry, I
And
didn't
those,
interrupt you.
oh, no, it's okay. If those two were done, then we would have an updated plan because we would have every part of our town done. And so, that had gone through, that we did wanna see what that was gonna cost and pursue it. And so I wrote to UDOT about participating because, you know, they're 200 and they're also road to Paraguna, which this runoff is affecting obviously both of those. And so we just got a response back from Tracy Munson on Friday that they would provide $11,000 to help with that study. So,
We did have, how much did we, oh, Judy's gone. I think we allocated, I wasn't here at the time, like up to $10,000, $5,000 to $10,000. The bid came in at $21,000. And if we have UDOT pay 11, then that puts us in the $10,000 range that we had planned and budgeted. This is where I wanna now, jump in with my piece. Talking today, that meeting I was describing with the engineers was with the Ace Hardware Development Project. Well, part of that is we're gonna require them to do a storm drain study they have to show us what they would do with a 25-year event with their own property. And that property is at the end of 200 South. It's where everything terminates, and there's no solution right now. There's a reason it's marshy down there. You got the canal company, their water, if it's not used, it ends up there. Storm drain ends up there, and now we're gonna basically put a commercial development with Ace Hardware, you know, is all I'll say right now, but other buildings as well, right in an area that is also in the floodplain on the FEMA flood map. So, we need this done for the city's benefit. They have to do it anyways. So I asked them, I said, would you guys pay us part towards this since we're gonna study this? You're still gonna have to show how you deal with your own flood water for all the hard surface that you put on your 2.5 acres or whatever it is. But would you pay some towards this thing as well? And they said, yeah. And I mean, for them to go out and pay for an engineer to do a whole study, they're gonna be basically duplicating some of the efforts that we would do anyway. So our portion of it would shrink a little bit more to get them to do it as well. And Andy said, yeah, that's a no-brainer for us, and their engineer said, yeah, that makes sense. So it's kinda what we're thinking there.
happy because we have two out with UDOT right now. The other one we won't hear about till the spring, which is the master transportation, but this is those two areas that was good that they responded.
Well, UDOT will have to help in working to get that under the freeway, won't they?
Yeah, so we'll see what this study says, but two ideas, it follows gravity. So you either go under the freeway straight west, which the problem is the freeway straight west is an intersection.
Right,
Interchange. That's kinda hard, you'd have to pipe it, I mean, that's a pain. The other idea is that you come south of, under 200 South, and you follow our right-of-way. You could have it just on the surface in like a canal, but eventually our plan would be to put it in pipe, and you actually go back to the storm drain, the creek, which crosses under there. And we were just tentatively looking at elevations with Bowen Collins, who we had engaged for this, if we signed their contract. And it flows, elevation works if we were to do that. But I don't wanna have a hardware store and a gas station and a whatever sitting in the middle of a pond. Everybody's gonna say that was done bad. So that's my biggest concern with that development, is that we get our storm drain right. So.
And Kelly was on that call and was able to get us some files that are gonna be helpful for some other things too. The files that Todd sent over that had the mapping.
Yeah.
We didn't have before that, so.
It shows the culverts that go under I-15 right now, and there's not any. I mean, if you go back uphill, then there's some culverts, but there's no way this would ever flow to that. The other thing we need to do is we need to reach out and have a good, serious conversation with the canal company. They can't divert the water and then irresponsibly not use it and have it end up in a lake that's right where we have commercial development. You know, they either need to use the water or not divert it. Let it by, but don't just turn it out and then just let it go to the end. There's no end structure to it. It just sits there and it kinda turns marshy. So anyways, this is just part of that we're gonna have to work out. Feasibility study is moving along nicely. We've gotten them a bunch of data. They're looking at all the regional stuff right now. We're gonna have another follow-up to that, and then we're gonna have a more public meeting where they wanted to kinda have all the shareholders, and I think that's gonna happen February, they talked about having two, February 4th and 10th, I can't remember the exact dates. But it's moving along quickly. They know that we have a really tight timeline, and they're just moving. So I'm pleased at their approach to move quickly on that. When I have more to report, I will. New cemetery truck finally came in. With supply chain problems, we've been waiting for a long time. It got delivered, and somebody says, well, we can have it shipped for $600, and I was like, surely, we always sending people to Salt Lake, we can drive that thing back. So anyways, Brad's mom passed away, and so the power guys went up, and I said, hey, let's just bring back that truck. So they drove it back, so it's exciting. Trying to figure out what to do with the old cemetery truck. Mick at the airport has asked that he could use it, said that was promised to him, so I'm trying to look into that and see make sure we didn't have any other use, or make sure there wasn't a, difference of whatever opinion or whatever. So looking into that for that, but it's just exciting to have the new cemetery truck. It does have a plow on it, the old one didn't, which is smaller and will be better to plow in there and take care of everything. So that's exciting. It's gonna be a good thing up there. I did meet with UDOT. The mayor was there, came on a ride-along with Jared Beard, who is like the regional guy, to look at the intersections, to start the study for Main Street and Center, and Main Street and 200 South. We drove around, he got to experience firsthand everybody driving right through by Maverick and Chevron and heading straight through. In fact, that's awesome. We turned and I was driving down, the 4 stop signs as you get ready to go up the mouth of the canyon. I kid you not, I'm doing 25 miles an hour in my truck between stop signs, and this out-of-state jack wagon goes out around me and blows through the stop sign and keeps going. And I'm doing the speed limit. I'm doing 25 miles an hour, and he's like, "Look at this guy! Look at this clown!" And I'm like, this is why the residents aren't happy. This is what happens out here all the time. And it was like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday or something like that, So, anyways, so they'll come to us with some solutions. And he did say, these things are data driven. And he goes, we're dealing with cities where they have 100 crashes a year in an intersection and different things. And he goes, I know you guys have a lot of near misses. We've told them about the former mayor, and we told them about Jim's accident. We told them about Dr. Roth's near miss the other day, and he said we pulled the crash data, and you don't have a lot of crash data, but we can see that it's a problem, and we'll study it. One of the things, when they just go into a traffic study and they just put the traffic counters, that doesn't account for the pedestrian stuff. And he said, so that they have a process, and I can't remember the acronym, maybe the mayor would remember, where they actually come and just sit there for an entire day and just make counts of all the pedestrians and everything like that. And so, we're not asking for the moon and the stars. We're just asking for some better signage, maybe a 4-way stop. And he said, so he was willing to, he didn't go and make any promises, but he says, we'll definitely look at it and see what we can do to help and all that. He did say your current traffic doesn't justify a 4-way stop, just the data, but maybe they'll consider other stuff too there. So he says a lot of times we put in a 4-way stop and we'll get more feedback from the public negatively. That says, now you slowed us down on my commute to work, and he goes, we have to manage, all of the opinions on both sides of everything. But he did get a good first-hand look at what's happening on 200 South. There is more of a car problem. And 200 South, Main Street and Center is more of a pedestrian problem, I think. That's the way I summarized it.
Well, people still stop there as a 4-way stop.
People stop when it's not and cause a problem.
Right, and I'm like, dude, keep going.
Yeah, and you're behind them as a resident thinking they're going to keep going, and then they stop, and then you almost hit them. You're like, what are you doing stopping?
Yeah, it's like, not a 4-way.
I explained that to him, too.
Anyway.
Did he look at those at the 200 North?
And I talked to him about that. What Dave was talking about is the crossing right across from Dairy Freeze and 200. And you have to walk like 10 feet out of your way to push the button in the grass, and then walk back to the sidewalk part.
Yeah.
And he said that they were actively looking at relocating the one, and I asked him if he would look at relocating the other. So it's right by the cement.
Well, that
More
would make
likely to
sense
push it if it's easy to do,
if it's
rather than if you have to go out of your way. Kids aren't gonna do it.
Oh, no.
No.
Let alone adults.
Don't.
And I was like, and they don't do
They
it.
charge through,
Well, and they haven't been functioning.
No.
You press that and they don't even work.
and he's gonna call the maintenance guy. They are solar, and he goes, depending on your clouds and all that stuff, sometimes the solar and the batteries in the cold, he goes, it may just be something like that, but he was gonna call the maintenance guy and make sure they were functioning correct, so. That's all I have.
The hardest part of that was they only measure for one day. So figuring out when they should look at traffic on 200 in Main and
In
figuring
the
out.
snow season.
So we said the snow season, maybe
5
right
o'clock,
around
4:30,
President's
5
weekend.
o'clock on,
'Cause they do it for the
Yeah.
18 hours, but only
Exact.
one day. And then on the one on Center and Main, maybe April in the spring, but not around spring break, because if we only get one day for each intersection, we better pick a good one day. That's
Yeah.
really typical.
You wanna have it where the people are out walking and their dogs and stuff like that, so it's warm enough for them to do that, yet you still represent the school kids.
Right.
Like,
Walking to and
dead in
from
the summer, you're not gonna have the school kids.
No.
And you may not have as many people out 'cause it's too hot, but really, really frigid cold temperatures, you're not gonna have the other pedestrians,
We
so.
settled on it could happen as soon as right before President's Weekend, and then also, Easter around, but not Easter week, 'cause that would.
Well, like Matt says, 4 o'clock or whenever that
you can't even get
parade
out of,
comes down.
Oh,
you
it's,
can't even get out of the store
Mm-mm.
to turn left, and
Mm-mm.
it's,
Not at all.
it's,
And try to walk across that intersection
Yeah.
at foot.
yep.
I was like, this is, why is it so busy? Travis is
Oh,
like,
Dan,
right
are you
ahead.
doing the pickleball update?
Oh, yeah.
So, there was no letter from Maria. We were waiting for an official letter, and come to find out, she hadn't sent it because she was trying to figure out how flexible the county was gonna be. So we asked for $392,000. Their board awarded us $200,000. And I talked with Maria and I said, well, what does this mean? Because in the board meeting, you were saying we should be building more pickleball courts, yet you're giving us
Less money.
less money. It's hard for us to build more courts for less money, and she says, I get that, and we realize that, you know, and I said, well, so could we take the 200 that we have and just build half the courts? Or are you just saying you're requiring us to come up with match to build the original thing? And so that's where she said she wanted to get clarification on flexibility. So officially, and I'll forward you the letter, I just got it by email yesterday, and then the official one's coming in the mail. But she said they would recommend that we build at least 6 courts, but it's a recommendation. So, we could build less courts with just the money that we got. What I would like to do is I would like to actually get a hard bid, 'cause again, we were just going off an estimate, which we weren't really sure that the concrete was it was $250,000 was just concrete, and we'd heard from others, you can get that concrete done for less than that. So I'd like to know what the actual bid is, so we know what our shortfall is, and I'd like to get the bid in terms of courts, right? Cost per court, so we could, so we would know what we could build 4 courts for, or 6 courts, or 8 courts. So we, A, know what the shortfall is, B, we know how much it would cost to build it at different sizes. And then we put it out to the community and say, hey, who wants to donate? We're at, in order to do, 6 courts or 8 courts, whatever it is, this is how much money we need, this is how much money we have from the county. And then set a time frame. The other thing Maria said is, she said these funds aren't gonna expire at the end of 1 year, we'll let you go 2 years. And we may even let you apply next year for the difference. And so there's a lot of variables there, but I think we need a good hard bid and then see what the community wants to donate. Maybe we just raise the difference right then and then it doesn't matter. If we only raised a small amount, then we would have to decide, do we wanna just build 4 courts, 'cause that's the money we have, and just go ahead and build them and then watch it from there? or do we wanna let it wait for a year and see if we can get additional money, or grant money from a different grant? So, but I do think the very first step is to get some actual hard bids, so we know what we're talking about, but that was my thoughts, but I don't know what everybody else
Can
thinks.
you expand, if you just do 4, can you expand from that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's what most cities do. In fact, that's what they're telling us. Why don't you have a phasal approach to put in 16 or whatever? And I said, guys, you know, we're trying to figure out how to build the ones that we have, and if it's just, you know, gangbusters and you can never get a time because it's so busy, then we'll look at coming back and asking for more money. But you're giving us a hard time about the money and telling us we should be building more courts. It's kind of a little bit of a whiplash effect, and anyways.
So would we need 3 then? Would we be looking for 3 bids on this initial kind of exploration?
Well, we'd put it out there and see how many bids we got, and then I really wanna look at our procurement policy, 'cause it's really long, wordy, and convoluted, and it's not simple. It's hard to decide exactly what it says we're required to do, so I need to spend some time, if I ever get some time, to study that, but I did ask Marie if she'd put me in contact with who Cedar City used. I don't know if you saw the article that was in the paper. They have a $900,000 project.
Yeah, I see.
And the reason it's so expensive is because of all the amenities that they're putting in around it, which we already have at Lions Park. And we were using that as match, and they kind of chided me a little bit. Well, that was really creative match, and I'm like, it's facilities we don't have to build. I mean, come on.
You do it.
But anyways, that's the update on the pickleball courts. So if you guys are okay with it, I'll put that out to bid and see so we can actually tighten it down, and then I think the next step would be if we wanted to just put it out there and see what the public wanted to do, when we know what our shortfall is, and we'll see how much money we get or don't get, and then come to a decision point. This is how much money we have. Do we wanna just build what we can build for that? Or do we wanna wait and hang on until we can build more or whatever, so.
Do we have to put that on an action meeting
Yeah, I would, to bid it, you mean?
to bid it?
Yeah, probably we ought to. I don't know if we have to, do we? I would, because this is not something that's in our budget. And, bidding it does not make us do it, but I think it'd be a good exercise to put it on an action meeting. I think it'd be good. I don't know if we have to, but it'd be good. But definitely before we were to sign anything, and, we should. So, we'll put it on next week's action meeting to sign the county's grant anyways, 'cause that is budgetary, and at that point, we need to put it on the action meeting, so.
Okay. I don't have much left, thank goodness. I've been working on these signs, and the county ended up having resources to provide them. I talked to the stake president about the youth being able to distribute them to every household. There's enough to do Summit as well. Paraguna already has something, a system. So, we can have extras at the city office for people who don't get them on their door. But we'll have those, and they're easily visible from the street.
It's just like an emergency
Just an
type.
emergency plan, so that we do have a way to see if someone's in trouble, and it could be a passerby, a neighbor. It doesn't obligate the city in any way. I've asked that as well, and so it's just a way to help each other if we did end up with a major event. So that was really great. Those got dropped off this week. We got, about 1,800 of them. And they're really nice vinyl. If you wanna pass them around, they'll last. I think we could have them in the houses, and people leave, they'll leave them. You know, it'd be the right thing to do, I think. The next thing is, we did get, master, active transportation, award. It wasn't something I applied for. It just came out of UDOT from applying for those others. And they said, hey, there's 2 cities that are gonna get an opportunity to work with Chris Whistle from Bike, Utah. They knew, or I had told them that we had, you know, issues with our transportation in general and walkability, all of that, just coming out of some of these other meetings. And so we're having the first kind of kickoff meeting. It's on February 22nd at 5:30, and that's when we'll kind of learn about it. But other cities they've done this plan for, it costs as much as $100,000. There's no match to it. We don't have to do anything with it, but it does give us an opportunity to look at our ways bikes can get around safely, kids specifically, kind of what I'm thinking about. But also, we can move some of our, master trail plan forward with this planning. So it's kind of a neat thing that happened. The other thing that happened is, kind of talked a little bit about it, but that intersection situation, I did talk about, reporting those near misses, and if we did want to call those into dispatch and say there was a near miss, that is data that they would be able to at least log the activity at the intersections, because almost every time the topic comes up, people around me say, I almost got hit, and tell me a story, and the community really can call those near misses in, and that'll at least build some data around those intersections, even though we don't really have the numbers to prove an immediate need. I still think we all recognize there's issues at those intersections. I was on the Re-engage Gateway Community Planning meeting today, the one I sent out to everybody. It was really good. It's recorded. I'll send a link once they post that, but it was just talking about how to engage the community better for more interactive communication. I have been exploring that to try to figure out if there's anything out there that we could use. Everything is expensive. I don't know if social media is the answer. I know that's where a lot of people still get their information. But the goal is to engage the community, not just the same people over and over and again. Specifically, they mentioned demographics that, like working families who probably don't come to meetings, aren't as aware of what's going on, people who don't have access to the internet, things like that. So it was a good meeting. I had to hop off to go to something else, but will post that, and I'll send the link. But the whole meeting was about engaging the community in a productive way for better communication. And specifically, it was for gateway communities, which I am considering our community to be a gateway community at this point. And I think for now that's it. Thank goodness, right? Anything else? Okay.
Well, Stacy's coming up. I think we ought to just thank everybody that dealt with that Parowan birthday, because we haven't met since then. And the kids at the high school was great.
Was it great?
Even
Was it great?
Rochelle.
I
And
missed
the
it.
birthday ball, I didn't see what happened, but I saw you over there suffering. But anyway, I think that was really, really good.
Oh, at the LEPC meeting, we did find out there was, going to be a permanent helicopter, life flight helicopter now at IHC in Cedar. And I learned that there's a new piece of legislation that went into effect in '22 called the No Surprises Act. So if someone did have to be life flighted on that, it would be no more than $329, which was really an interesting conversation because everyone had a hard time receiving that. They said where they ran into that and why that legislation passed is because people would be saying they didn't want to get on, or they didn't want their kid to be put on, and they wanted to remove that hesitancy because it is basically a ICU in the air that saves lives, and we will have a permanent one now at our hospital in Cedar.
So it's based in Cedar?
Mm-hmm. And their district goes all the way to Lake Powell and to Bryce.
And it's actually a private corporation that's for profit. It's not affiliated with Gold Cross, it's not affiliated with IHC. And they get most of their money elsewhere, so really, it's not, they did a presentation at, something else that I was at, and I was grilling them, I'm like, how is this thing funded?
The PIO meeting, was it at the public information?
It wasn't at the PIO meeting. Anyways, but it's a great asset to have, and dispatch just calls them out. And he said that's the biggest thing is they'll come out and people will say they'll refuse, but they don't realize it's actually, in many cases, cheaper than an ambulance ride.
And they go to remote areas.
Yeah. No, that was in the same meeting that you were at. It was.
At LEPC.
LEPC.
Do they ever do anything with ambulances? Or is this just air?
Just air. But they talked about everything they carry on board, and it's pretty impressive, including blood, which they have to have quite a certification to be able to do that.
And that's something I wondered about, we might have to talk about in the future. They do drone fly blood products now, and I don't know what our ordinances say about that, but if someone did need emergency blood products, that's something they mentioned that they are able to do now. It's kind of By a drone? That's interesting. Get blood products to people on scene. Okay, so maybe we'd need to present our ordinances to that life flight company to let them know we would not allow that.
I can't fly mine.
They're figuring that out right now. That's not completely done yet. They're figuring that out with the FAA.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be short and sweet. And this would have been on the agenda, but it just came up yesterday after the agenda had been posted, so I just thought I'd bring it up here and maybe we can talk about it next meeting as well. But I did get a call from, the TA asking what hours they were able to sell their beer. And I thought I had seen a time in our ordinances and I couldn't find anything. So I looked on DABC and they said it's determined by your local authority, which we go off state code, and state code doesn't specifically state the times that we can sell off-premise beer. So I've contacted 4 of the 5 that have the off-premise beer sales and asked them what times that they sell. I didn't contact Family Dollar because they're only open 8 to 9 or 10, so that would be within the allotted time, which I used to think, I thought it was like 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. that they couldn't sell. So, Hearts starts they sell 6 to 11 when they close. Maverick and the Chevron sell starting at 5 a.m. Maverick's open a little bit later than...
So is it supposed to be a.m., 12 a.m.?
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. Anyway, and the TA, who is actually open 24 hours, sells from 7 to midnight. So, I just thought it'd be a good idea to get that in our ordinances, so everybody's on the same page, so that there's no question on when these convenience stores can sell their off-premise beer.
That's a good idea.
I think we decided that it was probably regulated by the state before, and that's why we were silent on it, but now it's not.
And so that's why I gave you the state code and that, I just pulled that yesterday. So I don't know if they've taken the times off there as well, but everything comes back to us,
So
each
would we
city to regulate.
simplify by saying 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. just to cover the scope? Or
Whatever you
so we
guys
wouldn't have
decide, but
to
I think if we have it
individually-
written in our ordinances, then it's clear. She called and I'm like, oh yeah, I know, I've seen it. I had her on the phone like 5 minutes trying to find it, and I'm like, you know what, let me call you back. And then I find there's no specific time. I did talk to Chief Adams, and he thought it was, I think he told me 1 a.m. to 6 or 5 a.m. But
So,
he's never had a problem with...
when I worked at Albertsons, it used to be, you couldn't sell it until 6 in the morning, but you could sell it till 1 in the morning.
Okay.
But that was,
Worked at a gas station.
yeah, like that was,
It's gone away,
yeah, I mean, that's been,
Right.
but or
a long
it's been
time.
Peter's ordinance too, but.
yeah, and that
Yeah,
could have been.
when I talked to Desiree at the Maverick, she said they used to be 7 a.m. to when they closed. But then they would have people come over and say, well, I can go across the street and buy it at 5 a.m. and I can't buy it here till 7. So they worked through, because she got a letter from her the corporate Maverick, and they said, okay, you can start selling at 5. So I think we just need to have that stated in our ordinances, so everybody's on the same page, that there's no question.
Yeah.
I
Well,
didn't
that's a good
realize
point.
there was no time in there.
We should ask Addie if they have any problems or recommend something.
I did ask him before he left today, and he said there's been no problems, even like selling to underage or anything like that, but he says as far as selling when they're not supposed to, and he didn't know exactly when either. I think he was going off like the 1 a.m. to 5 or 6 a.m.
So you're saying we need to set a time when
We need to
you
set a
do
time.
not sell,
Right.
you know,
Just
liquor.
or when they can sell, like 5 a.m. to midnight or 1 or...
I don't know why this made me
Something.
think of this, I meant to update it earlier. I asked Jeremy which homes cost the most for electricity. I said to these new large homes that have lights on the outsides that are on all night long, and bigger equipment rooms with all the tool, just everything that everyone in these big houses have. And he said, no, it's the older homes that have old appliances that use the most electricity. And so I'm like, that's really good to know, because he said, my house is whatever square footage and $60. Because he did everything right.
Yeah.
So I never thought about it, but where the big energy users are the old houses with old appliances. I thought that was just really interesting information.
I was trying to figure out how that related to the alcohol sales.
I was too.
That's okay. I was like,
I'm always like conservation, and I thought, well, all these big houses that are all lit up, they're using so much more power, and that isn't the case.
Now,
Probably
all
my
lit
rotten
up.
house with my rotten old appliances.
I'm sorry.
if they have energy efficient homes, they can drink later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I used to drink in the dark, so I mean, I don't think electricity anyway.
we love you.
Just I forgot to tell you, I thought it was interesting. I'm always looking at those going.
It was very appropriate.
Hey, in the wrong place.
Anyway, so maybe we can get it on the agenda
We're all
for
brain
next
starved,
time.
Okay.
I think it's.
But we'd have to do an ordinance to modify our code.
Right, so
Yeah.
how, what, but I just thought I'd bring it to your attention now, that way we
No, I
can get
really
it.
Put it on the
Yeah,
agenda
that's
for
great.
discussion.
I
Yeah.
still have a
Because
hard
what-
time believing you can't go to TA and.
Well, we have to do
around
a
midnight.
public hearing.
I never knew.
I know, and they have the shortest hours, and they're the ones open all night.
Wait, we do not. We only have to do a public hearing for land use ordinances.
Okay,
Boy.
thank you, Kelly. I was like, do we have to do a public?
Thank you for correcting the record. Only land use ordinances require public hearing.
motion
Can I do a motion?
Absolutely.
Can I make a
I'd like a
motion?
motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Matt made the motion to adjourn,
We're
I
gone.
seconded. Yes. Because my foot is throbbing.
I'm glad you at least could elevate it a little bit.
I know, but I probably look like an idiot turned sideways, but I don't even care.
So is it painful?
What did you do to your foot?
She had the birthday at the dance over here at the kids. She was out there dancing and just
So I saw her down there, I was like, oh, let's just go say hi. I looked at my watch, I said, I got a couple minutes. I got all the kids sitting up in their seats. And I went to walk out, I wasn't even running. And my foot got stuck. It's like a removable step at the bottom, and it's like bouncing, and my foot got stuck in it. So when this one hit the ground, this one did not come. And it like